Chapter 1040. Yang Yi and the two parents distributed the snacks together. Of course, he received the most cheers, especially when he walked into the middle of the group of little boys who were looking at him with admiration. When Yang Yi came back to the front with the remaining flavored steamed buns, he realized that she was no longer in her original seat. Instead, she ran to sit with Lu Xiaoyu, while Lan Xen looked at him happily, the snack bag in her arms, and sat next to his guitar. "Sit here. Sit here." Lan Xen held the small steamed buns with one hand and patted the seat next to her with the other. She raised her head and giggled at Yang Yi. "Daddy Yang, sit here." At this time, she was also on the other side of the aisle, giggling. After Lan Xen finished speaking, she explained, "Little Fishy said that she wanted to sit with me, and then Xin also wanted to sit next to Papa, so I swapped with Xin. Of course, the seats were just a small interlude. After the car started and slowly drove to their spring outing destination, many children would not sit still in their seats. From time to time, some people would stand up and swagger around in the aisle. It was not safe to do this, but there was nothing she could do. The children were naturally active. Li Rulin anxiously told Hong Jun and Jian Liuan, who were sitting in the middle of the children, a few times, but she still could not stop these little fellows who had been awakened by the spring outing. At this time, she had to find something else to divert their enthusiasm. "Students, everyone, quiet down first. Today, we are going to the spring outing. Our classmate Yang Shi's father has prepared a very interesting song and wants to teach it to everyone." Li Rulin stood in the carriage that was as noisy as a market and could only speak loudly. As she spoke, the children's noise also stopped. They looked at Li Rulin in surprise, their minds a little confused. "What? Singing? Teacher Li has heard this song before. It's very cute and interesting. I believe that you will like it." Li Rulin said with a smile, "Before we teach everyone how to sing, let's invite Yang Shi, Lan Xen, and Yang Shi's father, Yang Yi, to perform for us first, okay?" She just made a clapping gesture, and these first graders who liked to join in the fun clapped happily. There were even a few mischievous boys who shouted rhythmically, "Good, good, good." It was as if they were afraid that no one would notice them. The performance required a small stage. Sitting in the front was actually a little difficult to perform. Fortunately, the last row of seats were empty. Yang Yi unzipped his guitar and took it out of the bag. Then he led Shi and Lan Xen to the last row. Along the way, his guitar attracted the attention of many children. Wang Lei excitedly said to the boy beside him, Look, this is the guitar I was talking about. Didn't you say it was a gun?" The boy retorted. "It's also a gun, it's also a guitar." Wang Lei stammered and muttered. There were also girls who were very curious. They watched with wide eyes. When Yang Yi walked over, they even stuck their heads out of the aisle. "Look, Yushi, there seems to be a sticker on that guitar." "I saw it. I recognize that sticker. It was brought by Liao Chanxian to play. There are many pictures on it." It couldn't be helped. When Yang Yi taught Shi and Lan Xen how to sing, the two little girls couldn't settle down when they were together. There were several stickers on his guitar. She was even excited to hang a small hamster doll on her father's guitar. Unfortunately, she couldn't find a place to hang it. Anyway, Yang Yi's poor guitar had been decorated by the two little girls. It could be said that it was full of young girls' hearts. When they came to the back, Yang Yi sat in the middle of the aisle, and then Shi and Lan Xen sat on his left and right. "Next, Uncle will play the guitar. Yang Shi and Lan Xen will be in charge of singing. But not only do you have to listen, but you also have to do Uncle a favor, okay?" After Yang Yi sat down, he first gently plucked the guitar strings. He smiled and said to the little guys in front of him, who turned their heads or leaned on the back of the seat to look at them, "Count how many meows have appeared in this song." "Meow." Chen Yuxuan, who was sitting at the back, asked in confusion, "What meow?" "It's the sound of a cat meowing." His desk mate next to him answered for Yang Yi. Although it seemed that there were still people who didn't understand, Yang Yi had already bowed his head and greeted Shi and Lan Xen. Then, he gently plucked his guitar. In order to let the little guys keep up with the rhythm, Yang Yi specially added a prelude in the front. It had to be said that Shi and Lan Xian had a good foundation in music. Perhaps they had been influenced since they were young, or perhaps they were also talented. They were very sensitive to the rhythm and melody. When the prelude was over, Lan Xian seized the right time and showed her soft but loud voice. She shook her head and sang, "Good morning meow, good afternoon meow, good night meow meow, good morning meow." In Lan Xian's pleasant and loud voice, Yang Yi's guitar playing seemed a little small. However, because the song was simple and clean, it set off the liveliness and interest of the lyrics. At the beginning, when Lan Xian was singing, there were still some children whispering. Now that Lan Xian started singing, no one was willing to talk anymore. Some of them turned their heads to the back row in surprise and watched Lan Xian sing. This song sounds a little interesting. At this time, just as Lan Xian sang the opening for the second time, her voice dragged out at the end. When she was about to enter the climax, Shi, who was next to her, suddenly made a sound like a kitten's meow. Meow. For a moment, the little girl's meow was like the finishing touch of a dragon painting, making the whole song more interesting. This was not intentional by Yang Yi, but the original Good Night Meow did have such a breathtaking existence. On the other hand, Yang Yi arranged for Cici to sing the first real cat's meow. Speaking of which, Yang Yi had also snuck onto a long-distance bus to escape capture. There were two girls in the front row, chatting and laughing while watching a video on their cell phones. This song happened to enter Yang Yi's ears. Of course, at that time, he disdained to listen to such childish songs, so after he heard it, he did not take it to heart. But when he came to this world, he brought the memories of his previous life with him. As long as he had heard a song before, he could search for it. Last week, he was also thinking about what song to sing on the bus with these children. Then, he happened to see Xiao Guai stretching. With these two key points together, he discovered this song. Good Night Meow was a very childish song to the rigid Yang Yi in the past. But because it was childish, it was very suitable for these children to learn. Speaking of which, when Shi learned to meow like a kitten, she realized that everyone's eyes were on her. She immediately became shy. The little girl's face was red. She grabbed her father's arm embarrassedly and shyly buried her hot little face in her father's arm. At home, Shi also learned to meow like a cat. At that time, when she sang this song in front of her mother and younger brother, it was a very interesting thing to suddenly meow like a cat. But now, in front of the surprised eyes of so many friends, Shi learned to meow like a kitten. She also felt very embarrassed. When her father was still playing the melody in the middle, Shi, who was covering her little face, felt embarrassed to raise her head. Moreover, she also heard many of her classmates' laughter after they reacted, as well as the meows in front of her who were imitating her. Meow meow. The mischievous little fellows could not wait to cry out. Oh no, this is so embarrassing. Chapter 1041. Students, please wait a moment. The song isn't over yet. Let Lan Xian finish the song first, okay? Li Rulan stood up to maintain order when she saw that the little ones were meowing so loudly that their voices drowned out the sound of the guitar. Upon hearing this, Lan Xian hurriedly craned her neck and shouted, "No, I'm not singing here. It's Cici's turn." Yang Yi slowed down the rhythm a little and gently plucked the strings with his fingers. At the same time, he moved his right arm and shook Cici, who was still acting like an ostrich. He smiled and said, "Hurry up, it's your turn to sing. No one is laughing at you." She raised her head. Her face was a little red, and she giggled with her father, feeling a little embarrassed. Yang Yi's voice was very gentle. He said softly, "Come, let's play that part again. When I play, Sasomi, you have to start singing, okay?" She looked at her father's encouraging eyes and nodded. Since it was the first time everyone was listening to it, and they were all children, there was no need to be so particular about it. Yang Yi played the song between the main song and the chorus again. In fact, she was only shy for a while, and it quickly passed. She, who had been on stage several times and had seen many big scenes, was not easily frightened. She listened to her father's guitar melody, and the expression on her little face became serious. Finally, she began to sing as her father gently nodded his head. I like your smile, and the naughty corners of your mouth. The afternoon sun shines through your hair. I want the whole world to stop at this second, to accompany you, to forget the world. When she sang, the bus quieted down again. All the children looked back and stared at she, as if they were still waiting for the same exciting and interesting lyrics as before. However, even without Meow Meow Meow's lyrics, she sang this part quite well. The little girl's voice wasn't as good as Lon Xian's, who could sing high notes at any time, but she's voice belonged to the sweet type. Listening to her singing the lyrics softly with a low voice, there seemed to be a kind of poetic beauty trickling down. The children might not be able to tell the difference, but they understood the lyrics. They also saw that in the back seat, the slanted morning sun outside the car shone in through the car window and fell on Cece's hair. Some of her hair strands were mischievously separated from the rest, as if they were dyed a beautiful golden color. And the little girl's fair skin with a hint of rosy color seemed to be as lovely as apples in autumn under the sunlight. The girl's sweet smile as she sang under the sun was probably the beauty described in the lyrics. However, if one were to look away from this beautiful scene for a moment, they could see that the two girls were singing together. Cece's chorus seemed to be singing more than Lonqine's, and it was more exciting. To Lonqine, this seemed to be an unfair arrangement. Actually, this wasn't the case. How could Yang Yi favor one and discriminate against the other? She continued singing the second part of the main song, Good morning meow, good afternoon meow. It was like a cycle, and this time, it was Lon Xian's turn to imitate a cat's meow. Meow. Lon Xian wasn't as shy as she. She generously imitated a cat's meow, and even stretched out her two small hands, mimicking a cat's gesture on both sides of her face. Following she's lead, she beamed with joy. This time, the cat's meowing was indeed very popular with the children. They cheered and laughed even more excitedly than when Cece was singing just now. It seemed that they had been looking forward to this part of the song. The next part of the chorus was naturally sung by Lon Xian. After Lon Xian finished singing, under Li Rulan's reminder, the children and parents in the car all applauded the two little girls. Is it nice? Li Rulan asked with a smile. There was another wave of nice cries in unison. Do you want to learn? Li Rulan continued to encourage. Yes. Many children shouted excitedly. However, there were also people who caused trouble. For example, Chen Yuxuan raised his arm high and shouted, I don't want to. I already know how to sing. Perhaps, this was just a performance of a little boy who wanted to be in the limelight. When Li Rulan asked him to try singing, he stood in his position and held it in for a long time. Finally, he called out, Meow. He was still weak, making the boys next to him look at him and laugh out loud. Okay, let's learn how to sing seriously. It's rare to have Yang Yi's father teach you how to sing today. This opportunity is very precious. You have to cherish it. Li Rulan smiled and gave the stage to Yang Yi. However, Yang Yi didn't plan to teach himself. After all, another parent of the three parents in front of him, Jian Liuan, was smiling. She held her phone and sat in the front row, taking photos and videos behind her. Although she might just want to record it as a souvenir for her son in the future and see how he sang with a big star, Yang Yi didn't want to sing Good Night Meow in front of others. How awkward would it be to ask a big, burly man to sing such a cute song? Come, Xian Air, you've already learned how to sing. Now, it's your turn to try and teach your classmates how to sing. Yang Yi said with a smile as he plucked the guitar strings and repeatedly played the melody of the first sentence. Lon Xian heard Yang Yi mention her and she. She blinked and didn't say anything. She was more active. Under her father's call, she tried her best to speak. And she was afraid that no one could hear her, so she raised her voice a lot. It's here to sing good morning meow, good afternoon meow, and good night meow. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night are all things that everyone knows how to say. She was a teacher for the first time. She tried hard to think of how to say it, but the little girl's vocabulary was obviously a little lacking. Yang Yi didn't make things too difficult for Shi. He smiled and helped. How about this? I'll let Shi sing this part first. If everyone already understands it, then gently hum along with Shi's voice. Children who don't know how to sing can listen first, then we'll sing together later, okay? While Yang Yi and Shi were trying hard to teach the other children how to sing, Lan Xian's eyes darted around. She saw that not far in front of her, there was a little boy who was listening attentively while eating a small steamed bun from the bag. That's right. My small steamed bun. Lan Xian remembered that her small steamed bun and orange jelly candy were still in their original positions. She was busy singing just now, so she left them there casually. How could she forget? How could she leave it there all alone? What if someone sat on it and ruined it? What if someone ate it secretly? And she really wanted to eat it now. Driven by this thought, Lan Xian couldn't help but stand up. She held onto the back of the chair in front of her and squeezed her butt against Yang Yi's knee. Little by little, she rubbed outside. Where are you going? Yang Yi quickly pulled Lan Xian back. Papa Yang, I want to get my snacks. Lan Xian looked at Yang Yi eagerly and mumbled. Yang Yi still knew Lan Xian's personality. He couldn't help but smile and say, I'll help you get them. You sit here and don't move. The bus is running, so it's not safe to walk around. Yang Yi paused for a moment and let the children practice, good morning meow, good afternoon meow, a few times. He went to get the snacks in the front row and also brought Lan Xian and Shi's small backpacks. Whether it was Lan Xian eating snacks or Shi teaching everyone singing, it was easy to get thirsty. Yang Yi had to remind them to drink more water. Of course, he also brought Lu Xiaoyu, who was sitting alone in the front row. Lu Xiaoyu couldn't wait to squeeze into the innermost row and sit side by side with Shi. This was just a small interlude. Soon, the bus of the first grade class 3 rang out with the children's pleasant singing. In the spring morning, the sun shone brightly and the flowers lining the road were tender and beautiful. The bus drove along the long road, and the spring breeze mixed with the singing and fragrance of the flowers drifted for 10 miles. However, it couldn't compare to the smiles on the faces of Shi and her friends in the bus. It was so beautiful that it made people crazy. Chapter 1042. The bus drove slowly. It took about an hour to drive from Wuhu District to Tingshan District. It was impossible to teach the children a complete song in an hour. Even though the lyrics of Good Night Meow were simple, they couldn't recite it all at once. However, it didn't matter even if they couldn't learn it all. When they got off the bus, the little ones were all smiling and chattering away. From time to time, they would say, Good morning meow, good afternoon meow, good night meow. The children next to them would sing along. Then, a few thick-skinned ones started to meow like cats. In the end, the group of children who sang the song burst into laughter. This cheerful atmosphere made the students from the other classes look over curiously. It was as if the small circle of the first grade class 3 was much more cheerful than the other classes. According to the school's arrangement, the children's spring outing was to visit the Tingshan Botanical Research Institute in the morning. The Tingshan Botanical Research Institute was located at the foot of Tingshan Mountain. It was a large botanical garden with all kinds of flowers and trees. There were rare plants and also plants with economic value. There were also special plants from different latitudes and different elevations. Most of the plants were grown in the open. It was like a small flower field or a small forest. There were basically no protective devices. The sun shone warmly on them, and the sight of hundreds of flowers competing with each other made the children gasp in amazement. There were also some plants that were transplanted from cold regions, tropical regions, and highlands. They required a special environment and were usually planted in greenhouses with machines to adjust the temperature difference. The research institute hired a few university students to be tour guides for the children. As they led them around the botanical garden, they told them about the characteristics of the plants and the special care that the institute gave them. Although the tour guides weren't very professional, and much of the content was still memorized or read directly from the nameplates hanging on the plants, Yang Yi saw that she and her classmates were listening with great interest. From time to time, their little faces would reveal a surprised expression. This was considered an eye-opener, wasn't it? Yang Yi and the other two parents followed behind the group. At this time, they basically had no sense of presence, because the little ones were busy looking left and right. With so many flowers and trees that they had never seen before waiting for them, how could they care about anything else? Unlike the other two parents, Yang Yi didn't listen to the explanation like a curious baby. Instead, he quietly took out his camera and took a few beautiful photos of Shi, who was looking up at the peach blossoms or other plants. There was no need to elaborate on the process of the visit in the morning. The only thing that Yang Yi found interesting was that at around 10 o'clock in the morning, Shi was holding hands with Lan Xian and Lu Xiaoyu, walking side by side in the field. At this time, Chan Yuxuan approached them. When Yang Yi saw it, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Shi, I want to ask you a question. The little boy's voice became more and more hoarse compared to this morning. He probably shouted a lot along the way, and now he was using a lot of strength to speak. Well, what question do you want to ask me? Shi turned around curiously. That's right. Has your father always been so cool? Chen Yuxuan asked. Shi tilted her head, as if trying to understand what he was talking about. What was cool? However, the little girl still fully agreed with Chen Yuxuan's praise. She couldn't understand, so she simply stopped thinking about it. She smiled and said proudly, Yes, my papa is super cool. I also like him very much. He can actually play the guitar. Chen Yuxuan tried to shout and make a weak voice. My brother also has a guitar, but he can't play it. Your father is too amazing. Of course, her father is a singer. Lan Xian, who was at the side, stole Shi's words and said to Chen Yuxuan with some pride. This was just a small episode, but after Yang Yi's performance in the car, many children in the first grade class 3 were interested in him. Even the little boys who thought that he was very tall and scary at the beginning had long forgotten their initial impression of him. They only felt that this Uncle Yang was very approachable and very interesting. At noon, when everyone was on the lawn outside the Institute of Botany, spread out small cushions and prepared to have a simple lunch together, the children came to Yang Yi one after another. Uncle Yang, can you help me open the bottle cap? I can't open it. Wang Lei was the first. The skinny little boy had a sad face and could only ask for help from Uncle Yang Yi, who he thought should be very powerful. Of course. Yang Yi smiled, took the bottle, gently twisted it, and opened the bottle cap. Wow! Wang Lei looked enviously at Yang Yi, who seemed to be effortlessly opening the bottle. His mouth made waves of exclamations, and his expression seemed to be saying, When can I be like you and have such great strength? Wang Lei was the first to start. Yang Yi had just finished preparing the plastic cushions for Shi and the others so that they could sit comfortably on the grass and eat the lunch they brought. However, just as he got up, a few little girls ran over and looked at him eagerly. One of the girls plucked up the courage to ask Yang Yi if Uncle Yang Yi could help. Of course, Yang Yi would not refuse. However, the little girls' requests were endless, and they all felt that Yang Yi was very amiable. The more they interacted with him, the more they were willing to entrust their trust in him. Therefore at noon, Yang Yi was almost as busy as Teacher Li Rulan. Back at Shi's side, Shi, Lu Xiaoyu, Lan Xian, and Du Yuqian sat on the plastic cushions. In the middle of them was a relatively large lunchbox. When the lunchbox was opened, it revealed the neatly arranged Tong Gong Yaki. This was also the lunch snack that Yang Yi had prepared for the little girls besides the sandwiches. These small and exquisite Tong Gong Yaki were specially made by Yang Yi. The soft dough was stuffed with sweet red bean paste sandwiched in the middle. When combined, the taste was extraordinarily good. At first, Lu Xiaoyu and Du Yuqian were only attracted by this food that was said to be Ding Dang's favorite food. After tasting the first piece, they wanted to throw away their lunch. It's so delicious. Du Yuqian praised and gave a thumbs up. Lan Xian did not say anything. As she ate, her eyes darted around. She looked at Lu Xiaoyu, Du Yuqian, and the others for a while, then looked at the Tong Gong Yaki in the lunchbox. It seemed like she was calculating whether there was enough left for her to eat. Fortunately, because this snack was small, it seemed that Yang Yi had prepared a lot of it. Lon Xian was a little relieved. Shi, why don't you eat lunch? Lu Xiaoyu asked Shi with concern. The little girl held her small lunchbox, but her head turned back and forth, looking at her busy father. I'm waiting for my papa to eat together. Shi turned her head, blinked her beautiful big eyes, and said to Lu Xiaoyu, "But your father is so busy." Lu Xiaoyu said with some emotion, "Why is everyone looking for your father?" "Because Uncle Yang is super nice." Du Yuqian giggled and said, I think everyone is treating Uncle Yang as their own father." "No." She became nervous. She pouted and retorted, "Papa is just my papa." Chapter 1043. The afternoon sun was not too hot, but it was not a good thing for these delicate and weak lower grade students to bask in the sun outside. Fortunately, the Institute of Botany had considered this problem. They provided the school with a grassy area with some shade, which was a very good place to rest. However, for these children who came out to play as if they were injected with chicken blood, it was impossible for them to stay in the same place and rest peacefully. In order to maintain discipline and prevent the lively children from running away, each teacher would hold some interesting games in their respective classes. Now we are going to play a game called handkerchief throwing game. Li Rulan took out a few square handkerchiefs, gestured to the children, and then explained the rules of the game. Yang Yi and the other two parents stood at the back. He did not intend to participate. After all, this was a game for the children. Moreover, the teacher was not slacking off. She was so responsible to take the children to play. It was not appropriate for him to get involved. However, he was interested in listening to Li Rulan explain the rules of the game. It was similar to the ordinary handkerchief throwing game. She used to play it in kindergarten. However, because there were too many children in a class now, the pace of the individual game was slower. It might take a long time for a child to have a turn. Therefore, Li Rulan was talking about an improved version of the handkerchief throwing game. She took out 3 handkerchiefs at one time, which could be thrown by 3 children at the same time. The 3 children got up at the same time to catch someone. Of course, they had to accurately judge the person they wanted to catch and not catch the wrong person. The other rules were the same as the original version. The children who were caught had to perform a small show for everyone. It seemed that this idea was very good. The children all gathered in a circle and began to play excitedly. However, not long after, a small problem appeared. When throwing the handkerchief, the 3 children who were holding the handkerchief did not agree. It was difficult to throw the handkerchief at the same time. This resulted in a situation where one of them threw the handkerchief and began to run, while the others were still foolishly watching. Although the children still didn't care, giggling and watching their classmates chase each other excitedly, Yang Yi saw that teacher Li Rulan was frowning. She was thinking about how to solve this problem. However, the problem remained unsolved even after Shi and the others had played for several laps. There was still one kid who threw away the handkerchief, and the other kids who were chasing after him couldn't catch the kid who had taken the opportunity to slip away and finish the lap first. The other 2 were still acting like wooden dummies, as if the matter had nothing to do with them. This flaw was quickly caught by this group of clever little fellows. In order to avoid punishment, the clever little fellows simply grabbed the handkerchief in their hands and waited for others to throw it, while they just stood there and watched the show. There was no point in playing like this. Yang Yi thought for a while, then walked over and explained a few things to teacher Li Rulan, who was frowning. Li Rulan's eyes lit up as she said with a little surprise, "Teacher Yang, you really have a way." With Yang Yi's status in the music industry, Li Rulan respectfully addressed him as Teacher Yang Yi, which didn't seem to be a problem. Thus, Li Rulan clapped her hands and told the little fellows to stop first. She then announced the new rules. It was still the same 3 people, but this time, it was the kid who threw the handkerchief first. Only the handkerchief thrown out would be effective. As for the kid who had the handkerchief thrown out, no matter which of the 3 kids caught the handkerchief, it would be considered his victory. The kid who won could also specify the names of the 3 people who would throw the handkerchief next time. In this way, no one could slack off. Moreover, there was another subtle change to the rules of the game. This time, the kids who threw the handkerchief had to run 2 laps to reach the original position to be considered safe. Of course, the kid who had the handkerchief thrown out could only chase in the same direction and couldn't turn back to catch the other person. With this, the sense of urgency in the game increased. No one could slack off. The kids who threw the handkerchief were all fighting to be the first to throw it out, so the fun naturally increased by a lot. It didn't take long for Class 3 to hear screams, laughter, and then cheers from the kids. Du Yuqian's performance. Wang Leilei's performance. Jiang Chen's performance. Lan Xian's performance. Chan Yuxuan's performance. Chan Yuxuan was actually the one with the highest appearance rate. Because he was too ostentatious and loved to show off, he attracted a lot of hatred. However, when the girls threw their handkerchiefs behind him, he reacted quickly. He grabbed the handkerchief and ran away. It was easy for him to catch a girl who was not running fast enough. The first time, he caught Du Yuqian. The second time, he caught Lan Xian. Lan Xian was more tragic. The other kids quickly escaped danger, but she was a bit lazy and ran a bit late, so she was caught by Chen Yuxuan. If it was just winning the game, it wouldn't be a big deal. After all, it was just a game. Du Yuqian and Lan Xian would perform a little show for everyone. However, after Chan Yuxuan won, he was so proud of himself that he deserved a beating. He suddenly became the public enemy of the girls. In this round, Chen Yuxuan quietly threw the handkerchief behind Shi. Perhaps this energetic boy wanted to tease the prettiest girl in the class. But he didn't know what kind of girl he was facing this time. There was some movement on the grass behind her. Shi immediately noticed. The little girl turned her head, and her beautiful big eyes immediately saw the handkerchief behind her. Shi's small hand grabbed the handkerchief and she quickly climbed up from the grass. She didn't even bother to pat the grass behind her as she ran. The little girl was tall and had long legs. When she ran, she was like a vigorous plum blossom deer. Shi, you can do it. Shi, you can do it. Du Yuqian and Lu Xiaoyu followed the other kids and shouted loudly. Catch him, catch him. Lan Xian also shouted excitedly. Her voice was so high that it covered the voices of the other kids. Shi ran as fast as the wind. In a short while, she caught Chen Yuxuan and ended his evil life. This was also why there was a scene where everyone was excitedly clapping for Shi and asking Chen Yuxuan to perform. Yang Yi watched from the side with a smile. When he saw Shi catch Chen Yuxuan, the little girl was so excited and happy that Yang Yi was a little happy for her. The other 2 parents beside him sighed and said that she was very tall. They praised and complimented her. Although Yang Yi only smiled, he was actually a little proud of himself. The first grade's Class 3 was very lively at noon. Naturally, it attracted the attention of many children from other classes who were stationed nearby. Some of the class teachers who knew Li Rulin couldn't help but run over to learn from her. Not long after, the entire lawn was filled with children's laughter. Yang Yi originally thought that he wouldn't have anything to do. But halfway through the break, when the children ran to their backpacks to get water to drink, Yang Yi heard a child beside him mention his name. Yang Yi was watching Shi drink water at that time. Because her handkerchief had been thrown at her several times, the little girl had exercised a lot. Her face was red from playing, and her hair was stuck to her face with sweat. However, Shi also learned to take care of herself today. She didn't need her father to help her pour water. Moreover, she took out her handkerchief from her small backpack to wipe her sweat. Teacher Li, I want to ask a question. Why doesn't Yang Shi's father, Uncle Yang, play with us? Yang Yi didn't even need to look to know that it was Wang Leilei who had spoken. His voice was hoarse and unique. He turned around and saw that Wang Leilei was holding his small kettle. He raised his small head and tried his best to speak to Li Rulin. Why do you want Uncle Yang to play games with you? Li Rulin was a little surprised. Because I think Uncle Yang is very interesting. He knows how to play games, Wang Lei said. This idea was very novel. Never try to understand a child's thoughts. Yang Yi himself couldn't figure it out. Why did Wang Lei think that he knew how to play games? But Uncle Yang is an adult. Isn't it unfair for him to play handkerchief with you guys? Li Ruolin said with a smile. Wang Lei frowned. This little boy seemed to be thinking about what Teacher Li meant by unfair. Yang Yi shook his head gently. However, when he turned his head, he saw Shi's big bright eyes. She was looking at him. Papa, let me tell you, I really want you to play with us too. She saw her father looking over, giggled and said. Chapter 1044. The caption should be, tired like a little salted fish. Whether it was the handkerchief throwing game in the afternoon or the visit to the Jiangqing Development History Museum in the afternoon, the spring outing was filled with all sorts of fun. However, happy times were always short-lived. In the evening, Shi, who had not had enough, could only reluctantly bid farewell to her friends in class and follow her father home. When they had first gotten into the car at school, Shi had still been chattering away as she clung onto the back of the driver's seat, excitedly chatting with her father about the day's events. However, perhaps influenced by Lan Xian, who was so tired that she did not want to talk, the little girl's excitement gradually faded. She was a child who was used to taking a nap in the afternoon. Today, she had not slept in the afternoon, and in the afternoon, she had been driven by her excitement to walk and walk. Now, her enthusiasm had faded, and fatigue had taken its place. When Yang Yi drove home, the two exhausted little girls were already dozing off listlessly in the back seat. Lan Xian had even slept for a while and had just woken up rubbing her eyes. She's just tired from playing. It's fine. She was quite happy today and was quite obedient. But she hasn't eaten dinner yet. She did eat quite a lot of snacks today. Cook some porridge or something lighter for her tonight. She probably won't be able to eat anything else. Yang Yi quietly instructed Lan Hao Kai, who had come to fetch the child. He watched as Boss Lan carried Lan Xian in front of him as if she were a baby before returning to the house. In the villa, Murphy was teasing Shi, who was lying on the sofa like a little salted fish. Did you not have fun today? Why do you look so tired? I had fun, but I'm also tired. Mom, I'm so sleepy. I want to sleep for a while, okay? She was annoyed by her mother's teasing. She pouted her little mouth and said unhappily, let her sleep for a while. She didn't rest at noon, so she probably needs to sleep to recover her vitality. Yang Yi arranged the shoes and picked up Shi's small school bag with a smile, as well as the things he had brought with him. He was about to pack up. Shi, you can sleep for 2 hours, okay? When you wake up, let's have dinner together. Shi made a sound with her nose, but she didn't even want to turn over, let alone go upstairs to sleep. Climb the stairs? How tiring would that be? Seeing this, Murphy giggled and said, all right, Mom will get you a blanket to cover your tummy. You can sleep here too. Murphy could be a little careless sometimes. She got up from the sofa, skipped over barefoot, and dimmed the lights in the living room. Then, she remembered that she had to wear slippers and go back to put them on. She then went upstairs to get Shi's little blanket. She was probably tired as well. When Murphy carried Shi's little blanket and pillow downstairs, the little girl was already hugging a cartoon pillow and lying comfortably on the sofa, asleep. However, at this moment, Tong, who had been playing by himself, came over curiously. Today, his sister went out to play, and he also went shopping. Why was his sister sleeping when she came back? The little guy had forgotten that he had slept in the coffee shop for a long time. In any case, Tong pressed his 2 little hands on the edge of the sofa, and his big round eyes stared at his sister's sleeping face. No one knew what he was thinking. Sister. Only when his mother came over and little rascal heard the commotion did he look at his mother. He raised his little finger and pointed at his older sister. His expression seemed to be a little confused as he mumbled to himself. Sure. Sister is sleeping. She can only play with you when she wakes up, Murphy said softly to Tong Tong as she covered Shi with a blanket. Tong Tong did not know if he could understand, but he stood by the side and watched as his mother covered his sister with a blanket. He stared in a daze for a while before his mother took him by the hand and led him to the side. When she was tired, she did not feel like talking or playing. However, after resting for 2 hours and recovering her energy, the little girl once again displayed her charming magic. Mom, let me tell you something. Yang Yi was still in the kitchen. He was bringing out the hot dishes when he heard the little girl's energetic opening speech. Then, she excitedly told her mother about her experience at the spring outing. Why did she pester her mother instead of her father? That was because her mother did not go on the spring outing with them. Furthermore, the little girl wanted to share her interesting experience with her mother, who did not go with them. Once she started talking, the little girl became enraptured. She held the chopsticks in her hand as if she was holding a conductor's baton and talked non-stop. However, this time, Mo Fei didn't feel that she was talking too much, because Mo Fei was also very curious about what Yang Yi and the others had played today. If Yang Yi were to tell them, it wouldn't be as lively as Cece's. What happened after that? Later, did your papa play the handkerchief game with you? Mo Fei asked with interest while listening to them. No. She twisted her little body and said with a smile, Daddy didn't want to play after that. He said it was unfair. That's true. None of you can outrun him. Your daddy's legs are several times more powerful than yours. Murphy laughed and glanced at Yang Yi beside her. She said somewhat exaggeratedly, But Daddy played the guitar for us and taught us how to sing. The little girl became interested. She cleared her throat and began to sing. Handkerchief, handkerchief, gently put it behind the little kid. Don't tell him. Hurry up and catch him. Tong Tong was originally not interested in his sister's long speech. However, at this time, his sister suddenly sang. This made the little guy raise his head in surprise. He watched his sister sing. After a while, he did not know why, but he grinned and waved his little hands happily. It was as if he was also throwing handkerchiefs. After singing that part, Cece continued and proudly said to her mother, We sang and played handkerchief, and then Teacher Lu came over and said that she wanted to invite Papa to teach her classmates how to sing handkerchief. Then your Papa is too busy. Mo Fei was a little envious and said with some emotion. That's right. A lot of people want to play with Daddy. Yu Qian also said that Daddy is super good. The little girl puffed out her chest and proudly said, Then they didn't say that your mom is also very powerful. She can sing so many songs, hold a concert, and is also so beautiful? Murphy glanced at Yang Yi, who was smiling and not saying anything. She curled her lips and said with some unwillingness. Hearing Murphy's words, Yang Yi could not help but smile. She was stunned for a moment. She hesitated and blinked her eyes. In the end, she honestly said to her mother, No. They didn't talk about Mom. Ah. Why is that? Murphy said with some regret. In fact, she was just casually asking. However, she still took it seriously. She thought for a while and said to her mother with a little guilt, Because I didn't tell them that my mom was holding a concert. I only told little Yua. Then I'll tell them about my mom in the future. Okay. Seeing that Cece was blaming herself, Mo Fei quickly corrected her attitude and said with a smile, Mama, I didn't mean that. Mama was just joking. Let's do what we should do in the future. Mama, it's okay. Let's keep a low profile, and life will be simpler. Chapter 1045. Although she was only in the first grade of primary school, after the spring excursion, the diary of the spring excursion, which countless children hated, followed one after another. Of course, when Li Rulin communicated with the parents, she revealed that she would use this as a prelude to the plan of requiring children to start writing diaries in the future. This 200-word homework after the spring excursion was a disaster for many children, such as Lan Xin and Chen Yuxuan. However, for Shi, or children like Wang Lei and Chao Rolin, whose families had long required them to learn to write diaries, this wasn't too big of a problem. This was especially true for Shi. The little girl, who had just finished bathing, was now sitting in front of her desk with her hands on her cheeks. She was frowning, but what she was worried about wasn't writing about the spring excursion. When Shi saw her father walk in, she raised her little head and asked impatiently, "Teacher Lee said that I have to write 200 words, but I feel like there's a lot to write. I can't even finish it. What should I do?" Yang-yi smiled and stood beside her desk. He looked sideways at her and asked, "How much do you plan to write?" Cece grabbed the pen and turned her head to look at her workbook. After thinking for a while, she turned her head back in confusion. She pouted her pink little mouth and said, "I don't know, but I feel that there are a lot of stories to tell. I don't even know how much to write." She wanted to write down all the interesting things, but she only wanted to write 200 words. Naturally, it was impossible. Yang-yi thought for a while and felt that this was a good opportunity for Shi to improve. Thus, he smiled and said, Shi, let's not write this essay first. Take out your diary and a piece of draft paper." Shi was a little confused, but she obediently followed her father's instructions. She closed her exercise book and neatly pressed it under another stack of exercise books. Then, she opened the drawer and carefully took out her exquisite and beautiful diary. There was a piece of draft paper on the table. "If you were to write a diary, how do you think you would write it? What should we start with?" Yang-yi asked. The little girl looked at her father in confusion. She lowered her head and looked at the diary. After thinking for a while, she replied uncertainly, "Write down the date and weather?" Yang-yi realized that he had to be more specific. He smiled and said, "Well, think about it. When we were on the bus on the way to the spring outing, what exciting things happened? You should have asked earlier." Shi's eyes immediately lit up. The little girl, who had a good memory, didn't even need to think about it. She giggled as she counted with her fingers and said, "There are a lot. Papa gave us small steamed buns and delicious soft candies. Then Papa took us to sing together. Then write 2 lines on the draft paper. The first line says Daddy will distribute snacks and the second line says we will perform and teach our classmates to sing," Yang-yi said to Shi. The little girl obediently followed her father's instructions. She wrote 2 words, then raised her little head and looked at her father eagerly. "Papa, I don't know how to write snacks." If you don't know how to write the words, just use pinyin to replace them. Later, you can check the dictionary to change them. Yang-yi did this to teach Shi to design a simple outline of a long story. Therefore, after Shi finished writing, he bent down and pointed at the 2 lines written by Shi. He said, "Do you see these 2 titles? Are they structured like someone is doing something?" The little girl blinked her eyes. It was not easy for her to understand this concept. After thinking for a while, she nodded. "This is our summary of a matter. Later, when we write in detail in the diary, we can expand from these words." Yang-yi said, "Then, when you write the experience of the spring outing that the teacher told us to, we need to simplify some of the content. So, of these 2 content, which one do you think is more exciting? Which one do you prefer to keep?" She could probably understand her father's meaning. She hesitated for a moment, pointed to the latter and said, I think singing is more fun." "That's right." Yang-yi patted Cece's little head with a smile and said, "When we write a diary, it's like building blocks. First, we have to think about which blocks we want to write about. Then, one by one, we put them on top of each other. But the composition that the teacher asked you to write is only 200 words long. At this time, you have to think about how to simplify it, keep the parts that you think are the most interesting, and remove the parts that may not be so important, just like dismantling building blocks one by one. In this way, you know what to write in the last 200 words." Using building blocks as an example, it was obviously much more vivid. The little girl understood. "Papa, but I still want to write a lot. What should I do? Because I think a lot of things are fun." In the end, Cece still twisted her slender waist on the chair as she spoke to her father with some reluctance in her voice. "That's why Papa asked you to write a diary first. Yang Yi laughed and said, "Your diary is unlimited. You can write as much as you want. When you finish the diary and are satisfied, we'll look back and see how to condense this diary into a 200-word essay. Then you won't have any regrets." "That's right." Shi's eyes lit up. She smiled and gestured to her father. "Then I want to write a diary. I want to write a lot of things." "Okay, you can write a diary tonight. If you can't finish it, we'll continue tomorrow. Tomorrow, we'll look at how to condense the 200-word spring outing experience. Write it well, okay?" Yang Yi looked at the little girl's happy face and was in a good mood. His voice rose a lot. "Okay." The little girl responded crisply. On Sunday, Yang Yi unexpectedly received a call from Fu Jun when he was teaching his daughter to write an essay. Yang Yi wasn't surprised to receive a call from Fu Jun. After all, he had a good personal relationship with Fu Jun. Usually, when he went to Yong City, he would eat with Fu Jun and his family. However, this time, Fu Jun was looking for Yang Yi because of Sahara Online Shopping Mall. Now that Sahara Online Shopping Mall was basically on the right track, Fu Jun rarely called Yang Yi about work. After all, it was a mature company with a rich talent pool and a complete corporate structure. It should also reduce its dependence on Yang Yi. However, this time, it was related to the future of the company and the development of the online shopping mall. Not to mention the management of Sahara Online Shopping Mall, even Fu Jun himself didn't know what to do. Therefore, he could only seek help from Yang Yi, who had always been far-sighted. "It's not convenient to talk over the phone. Are you free tomorrow? I plan to come to Zhongqing tomorrow. I want to discuss it with you and Brother Lon." Fu Jun's style of doing things over the years had become more and more resolute. However, he still maintained a sense of respect for Yang Yi and asked first. "Sure, it's a big deal. We shareholders need to sit down and talk about it." Yang Yi smiled and said, "However, I think you don't have to worry. This might be a good thing." Chapter 1046. On Monday morning, Fu Jun rushed to Zhongqing. He, Yang Yi, and Lan Hao Kai were at Lan Hao Kai's private clubhouse. They were drinking tea and talking about the future development of Sahara Online Mall. Now, Fu Jun was also a big name in the technology world that was closely watched by the media and the political business world. His every move also affected the nerves of many people. However, Fu Jun was better than Yang Yi. Yang Yi was a celebrity in the entertainment circle. There were paparazzi following him. If Yang Yi didn't deliberately shake them off, all of his whereabouts would probably be exposed. At least, Fu Jun didn't deliberately show off and didn't participate in public activities. There were no paparazzi following him every day. "Old Fu, why does the leader over there have such a long reach? Does the ownership of a company have to come to you?" Lan Hao Kai asked curiously. He was talking about the issue of whether Sahara Online Mall should acquire Wanjia E Online Mall. Wanjia E Online Mall was founded by Zhu Wang, the owner of a large-scale supermarket chain called Wangjia Supermarket in the western and northern parts of Guangdong Province. He had a good eye and saw the online shopping craze brought about by Sahara Online Mall. Moreover, Zhu Wang was a person with a little idea. He organized his supermarket suppliers, a group of small factories and workshops, and set up Wanjia E Online Mall in a hurry. If Yang Yi paid attention at that time, he would have realized that Wanjia E was actually following the route of Taobao. It was interesting to say that Sahara Online Mall was a bit like a large-scale, more rich online supermarket. This online mall set up by the supermarket boss was following the route of a shopping mall. It provided shops for other factories and small workshops to set up stalls. Logically speaking, such a model had the possibility of success. Moreover, when Wanjia E Online Mall was set up, they followed Sahara Online Mall and advertised everywhere in the country. Therefore, it attracted Fu Jun's attention. It was a pity that Wanjia E Online Mall's publicity was in a hurry, but the service was a mess. After all, it was an online mall set up by a group of outsiders. Moreover, Zhu Wang didn't really want to do this business. He was more interested in the industry. The online mall was just a small side business that he wanted to make a profit and throw it to the venture capital. Therefore, with the support of the local government, Wangjia eBuy online shopping mall recruited many graduate programmers from Guangdong Province's universities and created an online shopping mall that lacked service. It also attracted a large number of small enterprises to join in and many local people in Guangdong Province to buy it. However, unprofessional issues were quickly exposed. The web interface was unreasonable, the payment model was difficult, the logistics delivery was seriously lagging, the customer service was indifferent, and so on. A lot of negative news was exposed by the media at the end of last year. Many netizens even went to the Sahara Online Mall's product reviews to complain about Wan-E after they were cheated. Therefore, Fu Jun didn't take it to heart when he saw that eBay Online Shopping Mall didn't pose a threat to the Sahara Online Shopping Mall. It wasn't until a few days ago that it was mentioned again. It turned out that at the end of December, when it was time to pay wages and bonuses to the workers, some factories couldn't stand it any longer and blocked the entrance of Wang Jiayi's online shopping mall and Wang Jia Supermarket's headquarters. However, what stunned them was that big boss Zhu Wang, who had personally called them a week ago and promised that he would definitely solve the problem, had actually escaped abroad and disappeared without a trace. What disappeared with him was his family who had emigrated overseas, as well as the transaction fee and deposit of up to 1 billion. As Fu Jun sipped his tea, he told the story to Yang Yi and Lan Zhoukai. After all, he wasn't the person involved, so he could easily describe it. This incident before the new year caused a huge commotion in Guangdong Province. Many people ran to the province and the higher-ups to report it to the government. They wanted the government to give them an explanation. Anyway, this year, several bosses in Guangdong Province had a hard time. Fortunately, this incident was suppressed by the media and dealt with in a low-key manner. What are they going to do now? Lan Zhoukai asked. Auction off Zhu Wang's Wangjia E online mall and his Wangjia supermarket? If it's Wangjia supermarket, the land under it is very particular. Lan Zhoukai was indeed in the real estate business. He immediately thought of the key point. Wangjia supermarket is out of the question. Last month, the bank auction was just finished. The boss of Hailong Supermarket in eastern Guangdong Province got 750 million yuan of liquid capital and bought all the debts of Wangjia Supermarket and Wangjia Supermarket. Fu Jun waved his hand and said with emotion, "Hey, why didn't you say so earlier?" Lan Zhoukai felt sorry. He was very interested in the real estate market in Guangdong Province. Wangjia Supermarket could be said to be a good entry ticket. Fu Jun complained. How could he have time to know what happened in northwest Guangdong? What's more, it was not in the same industry as him. Fu Jun only knew that Wangjia Supermarket had been bought when someone talked to him about it a few days ago. Now, what's the price of Wangjia E? Yang Yi thought for a while, looked at Fu Jun and said, since Wangjia Supermarket bought it for 750 million yuan, Wangjia E shouldn't be too expensive, right? And they only came to us now. Could it be that Wangjia E can't sell it? The online shopping craze caused by the Sahara Online Shopping Mall had spawned countless e-commerce companies. However, this bubble had gradually burst in the past 2 years. Countless companies that did not have the strength and could not grab the cake had been eliminated. eBay was not the first, nor would it be the last. Under this background, even the investors who were jealous of the Sahara Online Mall's popularity had to think carefully before making a decision. Actually, there are still people who want to take over Wangjia E. But there are 2 main reasons why it has been delayed until now. Fu Jun explained to Yang Yi, on the one hand, there are people who want to take over. Their identities are very complicated. Some of them specialize in venture capital, and some of them are traditional manufacturing companies who want to enter the internet business. They have one thing in common. They only want the brand and website of Wangjia E. They don't want to bear the debt of up to 400 million yuan that has not been settled yet. This was the result of the debt that had been offset by part of the money from the Wangjia supermarket auction. 400 million yuan? How can it be so much? Lan Zhoukai frowned and asked, the Wangjia E you mentioned is not worth 100 million yuan, right? Yes, Wang Jia is not worth 100 million yuan. Someone told me that the highest bidder wanted to take over Wang Jia with 60 million yuan. Since Wang Jia is only worth 60 million yuan, who wants to bear the debt of 400 million yuan? Fu Jun smiled bitterly and said, "You may not know this, but Zhu Wang is really crazy. He asked many manufacturers to freeze the deposits in their accounts. He asked for an exorbitant amount, from 200,000 yuan to 1 million yuan. He also promised others that the more deposits they paid, the more promotion resources the website would give them. Obviously, at that time, Zhu Wang wanted to get a sum of money and leave. Wang Jia was strongly supported by the government of northwest Guangdong. In the past 2 years, there were close to 1,000 manufacturers and small workshops from Guangdong that had opened stores on Wang Jia. Moreover, Zhu Wang probably wanted to wait until there were 10,000 companies that joined and collected billions of deposits before he left. Unfortunately, Wang Jia did not last that long. Therefore, when Zhu Wang left, he had no choice. The money that he took away, after deducting the assets of Wang Jia supermarket, probably did not make more than a few 100 million yuan. That's true. I don't think anyone would be so stupid to spend more than 400 million yuan for a 60 million yuan Wang Jia. Lan Zhao Kai shook his head. He felt that this business was not worth it. Yang Yi did not say anything yet. He looked at Fu Jun and waited for him to finish explaining the reason why Wang Jia had dragged on until now. Secondly, Guangdong province still wants to support small and micro enterprises. They hope that these traditional businesses will not be affected by this incident and will not dare to use the internet. The government had discussed with them, and they also hope that Wang Jia can continue to operate. After all, Wang Jia had brought them a lot of benefits in the past, and their turnover had increased a lot. Of course, they still have to protect their interests. Fu Jun told Yang Yi. Yang Yi's understanding of Taobao was mostly from his experience in China during the last few years of his previous life. As he rarely went out, he often used other people's accounts to buy things he needed. But he knew that although Taobao did not have a good reputation, it had built a great business platform. For those manufacturers in traditional industries, for those individual operators, it provided the internet path to riches. So, when Yang Yi heard what Fu Jun said, he could not help but admire the foresight of the Guangdong province's officials. Regardless of everything else, their foresight was right on this matter. My wife's cousin was transferred to the business office this month. In the end, Fu Jun paused for a moment. His expression became slightly serious as he talked about the key point of this matter. Actually, someone behind this has considered my relationship with him. Fu Jun's wife's cousin, who was the person behind Fu Jun, had a close relationship with a leader. Now, someone wanted to take over the business from Guangdong province's leading online shopping company, Sahara Online Shopping Mall. So, he was transferred to the business office. So, now that Fu Jun knew about this matter, there was an additional complicated political factor in the consideration of whether to take over the business. They didn't let us take over the business for nothing. Wang Jia will be ours as long as we bear the debt of 400 million yuan. Moreover, the deposit of 400 million yuan will continue to be in our account. Even if a business withdraws halfway, they will have to wait for 3 years before they can withdraw the deposit. Fu Jun stated the conditions given by the other party. In other words, Sahara Online Shopping Mall could take over Wang Jia for free, but it's still a loss. One is 60 million yuan, and the other is 400 million yuan. Lan Zhao Kai frowned, then turned to Yang Yi. Yang Yi, what do you think about this? Lan Zhao Kai trusted Yang Yi's judgment more when it came to the internet. Chapter 1047. Lan Zhao Kai and Fu Jun both looked at Yang Yi. Although Yang Yi rarely directed the development of Sahara Online Mall, Fu Jun still had an indescribable trust in Yang Yi. Yang Yi rubbed his chin and carefully considered his words. He then smiled and said, "Actually, the real value of Wang Jia isn't the 60 million, but the 1,000 sellers who are willing to continue the business." Huh? Lan Zhao Kai was a little surprised. Because Wang Jiayi's philosophy is correct, I also think that their idea of turning their online mall into a large shopping mall, or rather, an online platform for small and medium-sized businesses is correct. Yang Yi explained, you can imagine a scene. In the future, whether it's selling shoes produced by their own small shoe factory, small vendors selling their own handicrafts, or fruit farmers who can't find a market, they can all establish their own small virtual stores on our platform. Then, they can find customers all over the country, or even all over the world, who are interested in their products. The problem of piracy in this world had been solved. In other words, there was a way to solve the problem of fake and inferior products on Taobao. In this way, there would be fewer unscrupulous vendors who wanted to hitch a ride, but Yang Yi felt that it would also give rise to more creative individual businesses. This model of Taobao was very promising. Therefore, before Yang Yi finished speaking, Fu Jun and Lanzhao Kai, who had good foresight, immediately connected with Yang Yi's brain circuit. I understand. With such a platform, whether it's an individual or a large business, their opportunities will be endless. As long as their products are attractive enough, our platform can help them solve the distance problem. Fu Jun waited for Yang Yi to finish speaking, then clenched his fist and said excitedly. Lanzhao Kai was more realistic. He touched his chin and exclaimed, it's not just this problem. I remember you said before, Yang Yi, that only when traditional industries are connected with the internet can there be a way out. Otherwise, it will become a sunset industry one day. You're not just saying that we're opening a shopping mall to welcome their goods. Instead, you're saying that we're setting up a platform for them to sell their goods. In this way, the cost of their learning will be greatly reduced. But there's something I don't understand. Lanzhao Kai frowned slightly and said, Zhu Wang also wanted to create such a platform in the beginning. Why didn't he manage it well? Why did he choose to abscond with the funds? Logically speaking, this platform still has a lot of development potential. If everyone comes to open a shop here and charges a little service fee for every transaction, we'll make a lot of money. That's because our Sahara online mall occupies a large market share. Yang Yi explained, it's difficult for emerging small online malls to form an effective scale. Don't look at their turnover of more than 100 million in 2 months. That's spread among 1,000 businesses. Moreover, I think Zhu Wang was already preparing for the current situation when the economy was in a slump. Then, when it gradually picked up, Zhu Wang has been transferring assets, and there's a problem with his capital reserves. Later, someone checked and found that his capital chain in the supermarket was broken. If he didn't run, he would have been caught. Fu Jun nodded and said, he knew some inside information from his own connections. Then we've made a big profit. It's not easy to attract 1,000 businesses. Lanzhao Kai laughed and said, he's helped us a lot. Now, as long as we take over and connect to Sahara's traffic, this platform will definitely be successful. Lanzhao Kai's brain worked quickly, and he understood immediately. But if we want this model to develop well, we must lower the deposit requirement. Moreover, we can consider waiving the service fee for our businesses in the early stages. Only in this way, our platform can usher in a huge explosion of businesses and users. Yang Yi reminded Lanzhao Kai, who was already thinking about how everyone in the world would make money for him. Yang Yi himself didn't have much business skills, but he had a wealth of knowledge and valuable experience from others for more than 10 years. Therefore, what he told Lanzhao Kai was also some information he saw from his previous life. No service fee? And lower the deposit? Lanzhao Kai looked at Yang Yi with some surprise and asked puzzledly, then how do we make a profit? Fu Jun also fell into deep thought. There are many ways to make a profit. I'll list a few, and let the people in the company think about the rest. Yang Yi smiled and said. He smiled slightly, but in fact, he deliberately pretended to be unfathomable. In fact, with his lack of experience, he only knew this much. The online store is free, but we have credit verification. If the business pays a deposit, then your goods will appear with a certification mark, or pay a higher deposit, and it can show a sign of 1 to 3 compensation for fake goods. Of course, this deposit won't be too high. It's best to charge 4 or 5 digits according to different grades and product categories. This will be known only after the marketing department investigates. The main reason is to reduce the threshold of opening a store and also to apply for a refund when the store is closed. However, many little drops make a mickle. The profit of the deposit, I don't need to say this, right? Lan Hao Kai nodded, and Fu Jun took out his leather notebook and recorded it carefully. It seemed that everything had returned to the time when he and Yang Yi were doing the Sahara Online Mall together. Second, our stores are also divided into several types. For example, the ordinary stores in the market are open for free, and we don't charge technical service fees. For the prosperous stores, there will be more shops with more beautiful web interfaces, more and better fonts, colors, promotion modules, and other custom modes open. For such stores, we will charge a certain technical service fee on a monthly basis. You can also call it a renovation fee. Fu Jun immediately understood what Yang Yi meant. He sucked in a breath of cold air and said, "That's a considerable cost." Also, we are currently launching such stores with a lower threshold. When the time is ripe, we can invite more big brands to enter, and we will launch a real Sahara Online Mall store. Such stores have a much higher deposit, and there will also be a transaction fee. Moreover, not only do they have to pay, but they also have to be verified by us. They must be brands, manufacturers, or authorized agents on the right track, or individual merchants recognized by us or a third party to stand out from ordinary stores. This is somewhat similar to the shops that we have in the Sahara Online Mall. However, I feel that if we put this together and really make it into a signboard, then in the future, we might be able to carry out God-making activities among ordinary merchants and help them become well-known brands in the country. This is good. Our online mall is even more worthy of its name. Lan Hao Kai said with a smile. Then, how can we maintain the original characteristics of our Sahara Online Mall? Won't this affect us? Fu Jun thought of a crucial question. Our Sahara Online Mall is still the same as before. We make the best products and the best service. We can provide first-class customer service, better products, and more reassuring quality. This is something that ordinary stores can't provide. The advantage of ordinary stores is not in their refinement, but in their choice. Yang Yi smiled and said, "It's just like how we like to visit all kinds of small shops to satisfy our curiosity. But we also like to visit large supermarkets because we can buy things with more ease and feel more comfortable here. By the way, for people who have a phobia of choice, or men who are too lazy to visit stores one by one, Sahara Online Mall will be their best choice." Fu Jun's worries were resolved, and he also breathed a sigh of relief. He officially put his thoughts into the question of, what will we do if we buy one Jia? It seemed that they had now made a decision. Lan Hao Kai was also thinking about more profit models. He touched his chin and said thoughtfully, "In reality, there are shops with good locations and bad locations. I think we can also refer to this practice when we start Wan Jia in the future. If they give us more money, we will put their location in front of the search page." Fu Jun smiled and said, "This is called bidding ranking. In fact, Sahara Online Mall is also doing this. By the way, Yang Yi, our Sahara Online Mall has a lot of new ways to make money. We can also copy them on Wan Jia. Fu Jun looked at Yang Yi and said, "For example, some pages of advertising space, link fees, and some promotional activities." Yang Yi listened to the discussion between Fu Jun and Lan Hao Kai with a smile and nodded from time to time. He realized that his two business partners were indeed very smart people. After thinking about it, they were able to come up with ideas that Yang Yi had been preparing to talk about but hadn't had the time to do so. Perhaps, if he let the people in the company brainstorm, they might be able to come up with many of Taobao's profit models that Yang Yi himself hadn't noticed. By the way, if we really want to buy Wan Jia, don't be in a hurry to act. Let the government of Guangdong province owe us a favor first. Let them help us promote and call for more businesses to move in. Lan Hao Kai was very familiar with some of the ways to deal with the government, so he suggested. "Don't worry about this." Fu Jun smiled and said, "After doing this, we can be considered a real company in Guangdong province. As long as we don't make any big mistakes, no one will come to trouble us. This was also one of the reasons why Fu Jun flew to Zhongqing to discuss this matter with Yang Yi and Lan Cao Kai. One had to know that this wasn't just a simple business action. There were also a lot of political factors behind it. Moreover, if this model was developed well, it could be exchanged for countless political achievements for some people behind the scenes. Fu Jun felt that his wife's cousin had already benefited a lot from being the leader of this business department. Looking at Fu Jun and Lan Cao Kai talking one after another, Yang Yi also wanted to show off his power. He had already thought about what he would say to Fu Jun and Lan Cao Kai next that they wouldn't expect. For example, changing the name of Wan Jiayi's online shopping mall to Sahara Taobao. This name not only crowned with the name of the Sahara, but also the meaning of treasure hunting in the desert where countless treasures were buried. For example, in order to protect the interests of merchants and buyers, and to reduce payment risks and turnover time, they also needed to launch a third-party payment platform called Alipay. Yang Yi, Fu Jun, and Lan Cao Kai's tea party that day could be said to be a major event that would change the Chinese business landscape. But whether it was Yang Yi, Fu Jun, or Lan Cao Kai, none of them thought so far and wide. Moreover, Yang Yi, this guy, was actually talking about this new Sahara Taobao. He suddenly thought of something that seemed to be a little unrelated. It was something that involved the happiness of his friends. It wasn't great at all, but it was very important. Chapter 1048. During the break before the fourth period at noon on Tuesday, the sound of the bell could not stop the students from playing around. However, with West Chu's little tyrant calling out, "The teacher is here, the class teacher is here," the noisy classroom suddenly quieted down. The children hurriedly returned to their seats, including Shi. She was holding a shuttlecock and playing with Lan Xin, Lu Xiaoyu, and Du Yuqian in the corridor. West Chu's little tyrant was a nickname Chan Yuxuan gave himself when he came back to class this week. He probably watched the large-scale historical costume drama Tears of the Tyrant, broadcast by Central TV, which took over Drawing Sword. All day long, he wailed and gestured with his small arms like a bodybuilder, as if he could also carry a cauldron. Li Rulin walked into the classroom with a thick stack of exercise books in her hands. She was already used to the children's panic, so she only smiled. When she saw that they had already returned to their seats, she didn't care anymore. She said in a sweet voice, "Students, I finished reading the spring excursion experiences you received yesterday. They were all written very well. It seems like you all have gained a lot from this spring excursion, right?" "Yes." The little ones responded in unison. "It was very neat." Li Rulin asked a few small questions, such as what they thought was the biggest gain, or if they still remembered the names of the plants they saw in the Institute of Botany. These small classroom interactions stimulated the children's enthusiasm and awakened their memories of the spring outing. She was very enthusiastic. From the beginning of the class, she felt that she could answer all the teacher's questions. Moreover, the little girl was very interested in the questions about the spring outing. Therefore, she had been excitedly raising her little hand high, afraid that the teacher would not see it. However, it was a pity that Li Rulin didn't call out Cici's name. There were a few times when her gaze stopped on the little girl and then lightly swept past her. This made Cici very disappointed. "Hey, why didn't the teacher ask me to answer the questions?" The little girl thought to herself, feeling a little wronged. Of course, this was not a big deal. She just felt a little regretful. The thought flashed through her mind, but she still listened attentively to the teacher. However, after a while, Ms. Li got to the point. She began to comment on the essay on the spring outing. Then, she mentioned Shi's name. In the spring outing experience handed in this time, many students wrote articles that left a deep impression on the teacher. For example, student Yang Shi's and student Chao Rolin's. Li Rulin named a few students and then smiled. "Next, the teacher will first read student Yang Shi's article and then invite her to tell the students how she wrote a good article, okay?" The little girl below the stage was pleasantly surprised. She didn't expect to be singled out and praised by the teacher. One had to know that she had been very disappointed just now, thinking that the teacher had not noticed her. The effect of being singled out and praised by the teacher was very obvious. Lu Xiaoyu used her elbow to nudge Shi's little arm, giggling and winking at her. After she greeted Lu Xiaoyu, she looked at the podium happily. Ms. Li Rulan had already taken out the first workbook and began to read Shi's essay. I'm so happy today because our school went to the spring outing together, and Dad can go with us. We got on the bus. Dad asked me and Lon Xian to teach the students to sing Good Night Meow. Everyone sang very well. Chi-Chi from class 6 said that she was very envious of us. After getting off the bus, we visited the Botanical Research Institute and the museum. We saw a lot of plants, but my favorite was the rape flower. It was a big yellow rape flower. It was so beautiful. There were also hard-working little bees flying around. We also saw a lot of cultural relics in the afternoon. The tour guide sister said that Jiangqing is my home, and beauty depends on everyone. Alright, we also played a very interesting handkerchief throwing game at noon. Today was really a happy day. When Li Rulan was reading, she couldn't help but shyly twist her little butt on the chair. Because the teacher was very emotional, and because these were all written by her, it felt weird to be read out. Moreover, many students couldn't help but look at her. This made she feel happy, but also a little embarrassed. After the teacher finished reading, the class was filled with warm applause. Shi's essay was very ordinary and didn't even use rich adjectives. After all, she was only in first grade. A child who had just learned how to write not long ago could write a 200-word essay in a complete and orderly manner. It was already very good. Many children even stopped at the daily today, the sun shines brightly, the sky is clear for thousands of miles routine. Of course, it couldn't be said that other friends wrote very poorly. The children of this era were exposed to far more information than before. Sometimes, the words they used sometimes exceeded the vocabulary they could write. However, Shi's organization was better. The paragraphs of the essay were clear. When the teacher read it, it was as if it was a memoir, awakening many beautiful memories of the little guys. This made them very impressed. Come, young Shi, come up to the podium and introduce to the students how you wrote this essay. After Li Rulan finished reading, she smiled and called Shi's name. She was a little happy and a little shy. She walked in small steps. One moment, she wanted to walk 2 steps faster, and the next moment, she slowed down in embarrassment. After walking up to the podium, she stood beside the teacher. She didn't know where to place her 2 small hands. One moment, they were intertwined in front of her, and the next moment, she pulled them back behind her in embarrassment, as if she was hiding them. We all know that a lot of interesting things happened during the spring excursion. How did you come up with your article so that you could talk about all the highlights of our spring excursion in detail like you are doing now? Because some students wrote about the ornamental plants in the morning and forgot to write about our experience in the afternoon. Li Rulan asked with a smile. That's right, that's right. I actually want to write a lot. She was a little nervous at first, so she said hesitantly. Because she had been called up to the podium many times, the little girl soon adapted to it and spoke fluently. I told my papa that I wanted to write about the snacks my papa sent. There were orange juice soft candies and delicious small steamed buns. Then Lon Xian said that it was super delicious. Li Rulan found that Cici seemed to want to repeat the whole day's experience and couldn't stop. She hurriedly interrupted her and asked, "Then how did you make the choice later?" I am, Papa, tell me. Papa said that I have to write all the things I want to write, and then I have to leave the things that I think are very important and interesting. Shi's eyes were smiling, and her eyebrows were curved. She looked very cute. She smiled and said, "So I have a lot to write." Oh, I see. That's right. We have to learn how to choose and leave out the important and interesting parts. This way, our articles will be rich in content and not too confusing. Li Rulan nodded her head approvingly. There's more. She was a little anxious. She tiptoed and turned to Teacher Li and said, "Teacher, let me tell you, I wrote a lot in my diary. Papa said that I can write everything in my diary." She was not only satisfied to be able to speak freely, and share her experience on the podium, but she also felt that she had done a good thing and helped other students. The little girl was in a good mood all morning. At noon, she, Lon Xin, and Lu Xiaoyu went to the cafeteria for lunch. She was still talking to Lu Xiaoyu about the essay for the spring outing. There are a lot of words that I don't know how to write, but Papa said that you can write pinyin first, and then look it up in the dictionary after you finish writing. But you don't know how to write pinyin. How can you write pinyin? Lu Xiaoyu discussed enthusiastically. Yes, I don't know. I just write according to what we read, but sometimes it's not right. If I can't find it, I will ask Papa. Papa knows everything, the little girl said proudly. I don't want to look it up. It's so troublesome. I write pinyin on it for the teacher to see. Lon Xin sat down beside Shi with a small plate and said, But, if you don't look it up, you still don't know how to write it. Shi was a little confused. Just as the three girls were chattering away, a little boy suddenly sat down in front of them with a plate in his hand. It was Chen Yuxuan. What was this little overlord of Western Chu doing here? Chapter 1049. After the spring excursion, West Chu's little conqueror frequently appeared in front of Shi. He didn't have any complicated thoughts, he just felt that during the spring excursion, this girl who usually only had good grades and was the answer bank that he coveted, had now become very interesting. It was inevitable that boys would admire beautiful girls who loved to sing and dance. This could be said to be a historical rule. But for the current Chen Yuxuan, his thoughts were much simpler. I, Chen Yuxuan, want to play with the most interesting girls. Therefore, he began to show off in front of Cici often, deliberately pretending to speak loudly in order to highlight his presence. But unfortunately, Shi's attention was not on him at all. In class, when he knocked over his stationery box and made a clattering sound on the ground, Shi only glanced at it. When she saw him pick it up, she continued to listen to the teacher attentively. During the break between classes, when he was meowing strangely, Cici was happily kicking shuttlecock with her little friends. They couldn't attract the attention of the nervous and excited little girls at all. And when Chen Yuxuan pulled the other boys to the back of the classroom to talk loudly and brag, Shi wasn't affected at all. After Lon Xion's invitation, the two girls held hands and went to the bathroom together. Now, Chen Yuxuan suddenly sat in front of Shi, Lon Xion, and Lu Xiaoyu. Before the girls could react, he slyly smiled and took out 2 small cucumbers that were wrapped together in a plastic bag from his trouser pocket. In fact, they were small and exquisite, green and shiny cucumbers. But in Jiangqing and some cities in Jiangnan, they were called small cucumbers. Shi, I'll show you, these are small cucumbers. Chen Yuxuan opened the plastic bag and pulled out a small cucumber. Because it had been washed clean, the skin looked a little moist. He proudly showed it to Shi and the other 2 girls as if he was presenting a treasure. Lon Xin just glanced at it and said in a loud voice, I recognize this small green melon. Shi's papa is very good at cooking. He cut the small green melon into pieces and then put vinegar and sugar in it. Anyway, the small green melon is sweet and sour. It's super delicious. Xion, my papa said that it's called cucumber salad. She kindly told her friend. Yes, it's called cucumber salad. Lon Xion scratched her head and giggled with Shi. But, I think I've eaten it before. I've eaten it with my parents in a restaurant. It's called cucumber slices. Lu Xiaoyu said weakly. It's not food. It's not food. Chen Yuxuan saw that the topic was deviating, so he quickly raised his voice and shouted, I'll show you. It was okay to watch a performance. The 3 girls stopped their chattering and stared at Chen Yuxuan in unison. Chen Yuxuan wasn't as nervous as the other boys, and he wasn't as embarrassed as he was when he couldn't sing a song on the bus. This time, he really came prepared. Watch carefully, the little boy said confidently. They saw him put the small cucumber on the plate, and then used his spoon as a knife to cut off the 2 ends of the small cucumber. The cut ends were not wasted, and he directly stuffed them into his mouth. Then, Chen Yuxuan, who was chewing the small cucumber, picked up a chopstick, starting from the cut ends, and poked the middle of the small cucumber. Because the small cucumber was not long, and the middle of the cucumber was soft, he quickly poked a hole with the chopstick. Wow! Lu Xiaoyu could not help but exclaim. Actually, it was nothing much. It was just that the little green gourd looked a little miserable after being tormented by him. Of course, the girls were still watching with rapt attention. Chen Yuxuan was making such a big fuss, so Shishi and the others were also very curious about what kind of tricks Chen Yuxuan was going to play. After a while, Chen Yuxuan dredged the deep and long hole in the middle of the small cucumber that he had just poked with a chopstick. Then he put down the chopsticks, held the small cucumber alone, and proudly showed it to Shishi and the others. Look. Then, Shishi and the others saw Chen Yuxuan bring over the bowl of meat soup that he had just served. Originally, this was for everyone to drink after dinner. But Chen Yuxuan wanted to drink it now. He held the small cucumber, like a straw, and inserted it into the soup. Then, he put the upper part of the cucumber in his mouth and slurped it. Woo 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 woo. While drinking the soup, he proudly pointed at his small cucumber, and his mouth made unclear sounds, as if he wanted Shishi and the others to see. Oh! The three girls, Shishi, Lu Xiaoyu, and Lan Xian, never thought that this small cucumber would be used like this. They looked at Chen Yuxuan in surprise, and their 3 pairs of beautiful eyes were wide open. It was really amazing. After all, this was the first time they had seen someone use such a thick cucumber as a straw. But then, Chen Yuxuan became mischievous. Instead of drinking the soup properly, he even puffed up his mouth and began to blow bubbles. The soup splattered everywhere. The one who was most likely to suffer was Shishi, who was sitting in front of him. Shishi reacted very quickly. She hurriedly carried her plate with a lunchbox of hot food on it and moved it to the other side of Lan Xian so that she wouldn't be contaminated. Hey! Chen Yuxuan, don't be like this. Shishi pouted and said angrily, I really don't like this. It's very dirty. Seeing this, Lu Xiaoyu hurriedly carried her plate and moved to Shishi's side. Yes, I also think it's very unhygienic. Lan Xian didn't move. She felt that since Chen Yuxuan wasn't sitting in front of her, she was too lazy to move. But she also loudly supported Shishi. Chen Yuxuan was reprimanded, but he was thick-skinned. After scratching his head, he didn't take it to heart. He picked up his plate and prepared to sit back down. But this action was rejected by the girls. Whether it was Shishi, Lan Xian, or Lu Xiaoyu, they were all girls who were very particular about hygiene. They didn't want Chen Yuxuan to sit in front of them. Of course, they didn't have any objections to Chen Yuxuan sitting in his original position. After all, they just didn't like Chen Yuxuan's unhygienic actions when eating. They didn't directly dislike Chen Yuxuan. Moreover, whether it was Lan Xian or Shishi, they were actually a little interested in Chen Yuxuan's little invention. Do you want to try it too? Chen Yuxuan saw Lan Xian's bright eyes. He took out another small cucumber and handed it to her generously. Lan Xian was eager to try, but Shishi stopped her. Xian, you can't. Shishi said very seriously, Papa said that outside, we can't eat things given by others. If we want to play this, wait until we get home. Let's play together then. All right. Lan Xian glanced at the little cucumber with a hint of reluctance in her eyes, and she hesitated for a long while before withdrawing her hand. Lan Xian and she received the same child safety education. Those picture books were all written by Yang Yi, so she understood everything that she said. If you don't want it, then I'll eat it. Chen Yuxuan saw that Lan Xian didn't want it, so he took the small cucumber back. While muttering indifferently, he pulled down the plastic film and ate it with relish. In the soup bowl next to him, the small cucumber straw was still there. Chen Yuxuan was going to drink the soup with it later. Chapter 1050. In the evening, the 2 girls came back from school. Lan Xian didn't go home, and she didn't take out her homework to do. After they dropped their school bags, they went to the kitchen while muttering. There was a burst of noise coming from the open kitchen door. "What are you doing?" Yang-yi felt very strange in the car. At that time, when Lan Xian wanted to say something, she pulled her and said, "Don't say it first." Now that the two girls were mysteriously doing something, he walked into the kitchen and asked with a smile. She and Lan Xian were in front of the refrigerator. The door of the large refrigerator below was open, and the light shone on the two girls' faces. Lan Xian was standing, and she was bending over. The two girls were muttering something, and he didn't know what they were looking for. Hearing her father's voice, she seemed to have a feeling of being caught doing something bad. She straightened up in a panic and pulled out a black bag that she was carrying. But now there was nowhere to hide it. The little girl was bashful and embarrassed, and she smiled at her father with curved eyes. He. Laughter can solve a lot of problems. For example, after the little girl smiled for a while, she realized that she didn't seem to have done anything bad. She was just looking for experimental materials with Lan Xian. "What are you laughing at?" Yang-yi looked at his daughter's silly look and couldn't help but smile. "We are looking for small green melons. But we are just looking for big green melons." She explained, holding the black bag. Lan Xian next to her took out a small green melon with thorns. "Papa, do we have small green melons at home? P.S. Don't ask why I keep saying green melons. I'm afraid you will misunderstand." After the little girl asked, she looked at her father eagerly. "We don't have small green melons. In fact, small green melons are the same as the one you are holding. Do you want to eat green melons fried with vegetables tonight?" Yang-yi asked, puzzled. "No. We are making a straw that can drink water." Lan Xian waved her fleshy little hand, directly revealing the spoiler. She looked at her friend anxiously. "Why did you say it so soon?" She should have let her father guess. Do what?" Yang-yi was confused, thinking that he had misheard. Papa, let's show you." She said excitedly. She and Lan Xian put the cucumber on the table. However, with their height, although they could reach the table, it was more difficult to operate it. Therefore, she brought two small stools for them to stand on. Yang-yi stood behind them. He wanted to see what the two girls were going to do, but he also wanted to take care of their safety. After all, the stool was not stable. She, why are you still using a spoon? It's much easier to cut it with a knife. But a knife is terrible. Papa said that I can't use a knife by myself. Yang-yi listened to their chatter and helped with a smile. "What do you want to do with a knife? Come, let me help you cut it." The kitchen was quite lively, but it didn't take long for it to be about to explode. There was a short silence. She and Lan Xian were looking at Yang-yi expectantly, waiting for his praise. However, Yang-yi's face soon darkened, and he asked exasperatedly, "Who taught you to make this cucumber straw?" A quarter of an hour later. She sat obediently in front of the desk in the living room. When her father suddenly became serious, it was too scary. Although she knew that her father was not angry at her, it was rare for him to be so fierce, and the little girl was still trembling with fear. She tried her best to pretend to be a good student and child. She didn't even dare to move her little butt and could only bury her head in her homework. Then, she secretly pricked up her ears to listen to the movements in the kitchen behind her. Of course, the kitchen door was closed, so she couldn't hear anything from her mother and father's conversation. However, there was still some movement next to her. She turned her head and saw Tong Tong walking over with a grin. He was holding a toy ambulance that was about the size of his palm. Tong Tong was not affected at all. He just realized that his mother wasn't around, and Xiao Guai and Bao Bao had run off to play somewhere, so he came over to play with his sister. Sure. She was a little nervous. She raised a finger and shrunk her little head to signal Tong Tong to be quiet. Then, she lowered her voice and muttered, "Don't talk. Papa is angry." Tong Tong held his toy with his right hand and placed his left hand on his sister's leg. He looked at his sister with a puzzled expression for a while. Although he didn't quite understand what his sister meant, he could feel that his sister didn't seem to want to play with him. He had no choice but to sit down on the ground next to her and play with his toy. No matter what, he felt very safe with his sister's back. In the kitchen, Murphy didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she tried to persuade Yong-yi, who was angrily preparing to pull out a kitchen knife to reason with that little brat. Okay, calm down. Children don't think so much. It's just cucumbers. In their eyes, cucumbers are no different from pumpkins and watermelons. Murphy said softly, children should be taught a lesson. Listen to what Shi and Xinair said to me. He even brought 2 small cucumbers and wanted Shi to try them. How can I not be angry? Yang-yi said angrily as he huffed through his nose. He even rolled up his sleeves. Also, I'm telling you, this Chan Yuxuan, I already noticed him during the spring outing. Yang-yi continued to complain to Murphy. When he saw that our daughter was pretty, he kept coming to our side. Let me use a perhaps inappropriate analogy. He was like a little peacock, swaying in front of me with its tail open. At that time, I wanted to take him out and beat him up. Murphy looked at Yang-yi's gnashing teeth and couldn't help but find it funny. She reached out to pull Yang-yi's hand and gently stroked Yang-yi's chest. She said softly, okay, don't always fight and kill. Don't think of things in a complicated way. They're all 6 or 7-year-old children. How can it be so complicated? And you said it yourself, this child is usually quite naughty, so these are all very normal. I can't control others, but he's not allowed to do this to Shi. Yang-yi gradually calmed down after being comforted by Murphy. However, he still couldn't help but say this resentfully. But you can't hit or scold other people's children. After all, he might not have done it on purpose. He's just like Shi when she came back tonight. He learned something new and wanted to show it in front of his classmates. Murphy slowly persuaded Yang-yi. We shouldn't make a fuss about it. Look, you scared Shi and Xinair tonight. Just now, when Xinair went back, she even asked me if she couldn't eat at our house today because Papa Yang was angry today. When Yang-yi heard this, the image of a fat girl in a dilemma appeared in his mind. He couldn't help but smile. Murphy was able to calm Yang-yi down when he was in a state of rage. She knew Yang-yi too well. When she saw Yang-yi calm down, she said with a smile, of course, we can't let this kind of thing happen. If we don't take it seriously, I'm afraid she won't know how to deal with it if she really encounters a problem in the future. If she really encounters a problem, then Yang-yi glanced at the kitchen knives next to him. These knives seemed too short. Hey, are you stupid? Don't say such angry words. We don't want anything bad to happen to Shi. Murphy said angrily, what I mean is, we have to take precautions. You have to think about how to tactfully tell Shi about this matter. If there are bad people who have bad intentions in the future, how should she deal with it? You have so many ideas. I believe you can handle it properly. Yang-yi was a little disappointed that he couldn't really sharpen his knives. However, he was a rational person now. He could understand the reason that Murphy said. He was indeed a little impulsive just now. Okay, let me think about it. Yang-yi smiled and reached out to hug Murphy. He said softly, thank you. Murphy also hugged Yang-yi with relief. A lot of words were said without saying. Chapter 1051. Her mother came out of the kitchen, and not long after, the tempting aroma of ginger and onion oil floated out of the kitchen. Cece knew that her father had already started preparing dinner in the kitchen. Is Papa still angry? The little girl thought anxiously. However, it seemed that her mother didn't want to tell her about the progress of persuasion. She just walked out with a smile, which gave Shi a positive signal. After the little girl finished her homework, she didn't know what to do. Should she put down her pen and play with her brother while waiting for dinner? Or should she continue to sit at the desk and study hard like a good student? She knew that her father liked her to be obedient. She couldn't be too naughty. Fortunately, Murphy seemed to see She's dilemma. She came over and asked she if she had finished her homework. Then she said with a smile, "Since you've finished your homework, get up and have a rest. By the way, your papa asked you to go to the kitchen after finishing your homework. Don't be afraid. Your papa won't be angry with you." Murphy comforted the little girl who was a little hesitant. The half-closed kitchen door was gently pushed open. She's delicate little face carefully appeared behind the door. She stuck her head out, blinked her big eyes, and looked at her father who was busy. She had to see if her father was still as angry as before. What caught She's eyes was her father's kind and gentle smile. She couldn't help but be surprised. It turned out that she was discovered by her father as soon as she opened the door. She, you're here?" Yang-yi laughed heartily, waved to her, and said, "Come here and try the slow-roasted pork made by your father. Let's see if it tastes good." Yang-yi had been working on this slow-roasted pork this afternoon. One had to know that this was not a barbecue, but a roasting. He had applied a lot of ingredients, as well as a sweet and sour sauce made from fruits and vegetables. The pork was wrapped in foil, and then sent into the oven to roast. The process was very complicated. Although it was troublesome, the Western-style barbecue tasted good. Moreover, cutting the barbecue was also a pleasure, as long as no salt was sprinkled. Yang-yi cut the caramel-colored barbecue, and the soft, tender, and juicy pork inside was turned over with steaming hot air. "Wow, it smells so good." She smelled the rich fragrance of the meat and couldn't help but go to her father's side. She held the kitchen counter with her two small hands and opened her eyes wide, watching her father cut the barbecue. Her father's warm attitude just now made the little girl feel relieved. As long as her father wasn't angry, she could still be familiar with him. She could act coquettishly and rely on him. Yang-yi cut a piece of the most tender barbecue pork with a knife and dipped it in the sour plum sauce that he had prepared earlier. Holding it in his hands, he bent over to She and said with a smile, "Come, try it. See how good Daddy's cooking is." She was already craving for it. At this moment, she forgot to speak. She only cared about opening her small mouth and biting the warm barbecue pork into her mouth. The sour and sweet taste of the sour plum sauce stimulated She's taste buds, and the delicious taste of the meat filled the little girl's senses. Not only was it fragrant, but the texture was also top-notch. With a light bite, the soft pork spread out like ice cream, and with a bite of the high moisture content of the pork, the gravy overflowed. At this moment, satisfaction was written all over the little girl's face. "Is it good?" Yang-yi saw that she had forgotten to speak, so he asked with a smile. She nodded vigorously. Then she leaned on the counter and anxiously stamped her feet. It seemed that she couldn't open her mouth to speak. She was almost suffocated. In addition to being anxious, she raised her small head with satisfaction and smiled radiantly with her father. "Later, let's send a portion to Xin Air and her parents to try. Then we'll come back to eat, okay?" Yang-yi smiled and said, "Daddy made a lot of barbecue today. We can't finish it alone." She finally chewed up the barbecue pork in her mouth and swallowed it. At this time, she couldn't wait to giggle with her father and said, "It's so delicious. Daddy, it's really delicious. I like the sour and sweet taste very much." Then, okay. Let's also let Xin Air eat it. She should like it very much." It seemed that Cece was almost suffocated from not being able to express her feelings with words just now. Seeing she beaming with joy, Yang-yi secretly breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. After bribing She, Yang-yi tidied up a little. He took off his gloves and squatted down. While helping She tidy her clothes, he looked into the little girl's clear eyes and said softly, She, Daddy wants to apologize to you. I suddenly got angry just now. Maybe I scared you." She didn't expect that her father would suddenly take the initiative to apologize. She blinked her eyes in surprise, but soon she reacted. The little girl stepped forward and put her arms around her father's neck. She snuggled into her father's arms and twisted her body like a spoiled child. She smiled and said, "Daddy, it's okay." It was okay. Daddy was so scary just now, but she liked her father, who was calm and gentle like he was now. "It's all Daddy's fault." Yang Yi rubbed Shishi's little head lovingly and said, "Actually, Daddy didn't lose his temper at you, nor did he blame you and Exiner. Daddy just thinks that it's not very good for you to learn how to use cucumber straws." Shishi snuggled comfortably in her father's arms and sat on her father's knees. She asked curiously, "Why?" "Because this is something you can't understand now. When you grow up, you'll understand." Yang Yi smiled and said, "What I want to tell you now is, if you meet someone who talks to you about cucumbers in the future, especially boys or uncles. Anyway, other than your parents, what should you do if they talk to you about cucumbers and cucumbers?" "What should I do?" She asked confusedly. "Just like what Daddy told you before, if someone wants to take you somewhere else to play, you should tell Daddy first." Yang Yi said gently, "If you are in a similar situation now, and someone wants to invite you to eat or watch something, you should also say to him, 'I'm sorry, I have to ask for my father's permission first.'" Sisi understood. She giggled and said, "I know. Papa is worried that they are bad people. But Chen Yuxuan is not a bad person. He just doesn't like to study. Teacher Li said he is too naughty. Whether they are people we know or not, we have to be careful. After all, we don't know if there are bad people among the people we know." Yang Yi said, "Okay." Shishi grabbed her father's big hand and played with it in front of her. "There's more." Yang Yi held back his laughter and said seriously, "In the future, if you meet someone who talks about cucumbers to you, just tell him that I am not interested in them, because my daddy's cooking is the best. He is best at cutting cucumbers, chopping cucumbers, smashing cucumbers, and pickling cucumbers. Well, remember these four, you must tell him." Shishi's eyes lit up and said happily, "Hey, Daddy, let me tell you, Exiner said that before Chan Yuxuan's performance, she said that Daddy will cut the cucumbers into pieces and pickle them with sugar and vinegar. It is super delicious." Yang Yi was stunned for a moment before he laughed. "Is that so? Exiner did a good job. Cut her a piece of roast pork to eat tonight." "Hee hee." The little girl didn't know why, but she also laughed with her father. Chapter 1052. After entering April, whether it was The Shawshank Redemption, the animated film Frozen, or I Am a Singer, which was about to be released during the summer vacation, they all carried out an overwhelming amount of publicity. Of course, since March, Jiangnan TV station had been broadcasting various promotional videos for I Am a Singer. Whether it was the introduction video of the luxurious recording studio or the individual promotional videos of several singers, their publicity for I Am a Singer had never been reduced. On the other hand, it could be seen that the advertisements of the influential media and broadcasters on the internet and microbroadcasting were all produced by China Star. After all, they were more skilled at these little tricks. However, some uninvited media were very interested in the two movies related to Yang Yi that were released at the same time during the summer vacation. They did not hesitate to make a comparison between the two movies of completely different genres to guess which one would get a higher box office. The Shawshank Redemption is undoubtedly the most anticipated movie of this summer vacation. Whether it is Yang Yi's storywriting ability, the great director Wu Yian, or the big-name actors Chen Fengchen, Li Baogua, Jie Yuchen, etc., the box office appeal is far stronger than an animated film without a star as a foil. But Frozen was after all personally invested in by Yang Yi. The story and character design were all written by Yang Yi. And the company that produced the Mantis Shrimp animation also had Yang Yi as a shareholder. Yang Yi has always been good at creating miracles. The animated film that he personally supervised may also be endowed with a certain amount of magic. The box office is very unpredictable. Of course, these public opinions could not affect the publicity of the two movies that were not of the same genre at all. Most of the people who paid attention to the two movies were from two different groups, unless they came purely for Yang Yi's name. After entering April, Murphy also had two concerts scheduled for him. The first concert in April was in Shanghai, which was their familiar home ground. The second concert was in Chengdu, which was Murphy's first concert in Chengdu, although Yang Yi had held a signing event here before. Murphy's concert in Chengdu was scheduled for the end of April. However, the fans' enthusiasm was hard to resist. Every time a limited number of concert tickets were sold out in less than 30 seconds. This speed even surpassed the record of the concert tickets sold in Shanghai. Moreover, according to the technical statistics, most of the fans who bought tickets came from the central and western regions. It seemed that there were also quite a large number of fans from non-coastal regions. The next day after the concert in Shanghai, Yang Yi brought Shi and Tong Tong back to Zhongqing in a hurry. Shi couldn't wait any longer. She was worried that she would miss the blooming of her radish flower. Speaking of Shi's radish flowers, they were a little ill-fated. She had encountered many disasters in the process of planting these radish heads. It could be seen from Shi's planting diary, March 10th. It's not good. When I went to observe it, I found that one of the radish heads had rotted. I quickly went to find my father. My father said not to worry and that we should treat it. Then, we put it on the chopping board. My father used a knife to cut off the rotten part. Then, we took a small plate and filled it with water for it to live in. My father also poured salt water on it, saying that it needed to be disinfected. Oh yes, my father also cut off the yellow leaves. I was so sad to see it sick. You have to get better soon. Of course, these were only the diary entries about the radish head's planting. March 14th, the sick radish head finally got better and grew new leaves. My father said that it was because I changed the water for it every day. I'm so happy. March 15th, my father said that the other radish heads were going to get sick too. We need to find another place for them to live. My father taught me to take them out of the soil. I used a toothbrush to bathe them. Then, they lived with the sick radish head. Don't get sick. I'm so worried. March 21st, my father said that the radish head has sprouted and can be planted in the soil. March 25th, something super scary happened. I saw a few little bugs eating the radish head's leaves. I was so angry, but I'm very afraid of the bugs. I asked my father to help me catch the bugs. My father said that you can think of a way yourself. Then, I thought, and I thought of using a fan to fan them away. I thought of the Bull Demon King's iron fan and Princess's fan, which could fan them far away. Am I very smart? March 26th, finally, there are no more bugs. I've seen it many times today. There can't be any more bugs eating my radish head. March 29th, today, I cried because Little Gray was too bad. It broke one of my radish leaves. I asked my father to take a look. My father said that it was very difficult to live. I was so sad that I cried. Later, my father and I buried it under the tree because it would provide nutrients to the tree. The brackets were added by Yang Yi later. Or maybe she didn't know how to write it and left it blank. Later, she asked Yang Yi and he taught her how to fill it in. April 1st, my father told me a piece of good news. My radish head is going to bloom. Not all of them are going to bloom. Only one is going to bloom, but I'm also very happy. Yes, after experiencing rotting, insect bites, cat steps, and other disasters, a radish head was finally going to bloom. This was something that even Yang Yi felt was a little magical. He thought that radish heads could only bloom radish tassels. He didn't expect one of them to bloom many small flower buds. Perhaps this radish head kept more of the radish's tissue? When Yang Yi cut it, he left more than half of its tissue because it had some bug eyes. The complicated reason behind this was unknown. In any case, the little girl had only come to Shanghai with her father for a day, but she was a little anxious. She was worried that her radish flowers wouldn't bloom because they were not taken care of and watered for a short day. Therefore, when she woke up early in the morning, she urged her father to hurry home. Murphy still had to attend the follow-up activities, such as the company's arranged meet and greet for lucky fans and giving them autographed records and blessings. Yang Yi brought the two children home first. When they reached home and got out of the car, she hurried to the place where she planted the radish heads. Soon, the little girl cried out in surprise, "Papa, come and see. It's really blooming. It's so beautiful." Yang Yi hugged Tong Tong with his left hand and was about to take out the luggage in the trunk with his right hand. He looked back and saw the little girl with bright eyes and white teeth under the bright sunlight. Her happy smile was like a blooming flower. Sister. Tong Tong also saw his sister smiling at him. He thought that his sister was calling him, so he grinned happily and patted his father's arm with his chubby little hand. He struggled to get down and go to his sister. Yang Yi saw that Tong Tong was also excited, so he smiled and threw the luggage back into the trunk. He carried Tong Tong and walked to Shi Shi. Chapter 1053. The flowers that the radish bloomed were not astonishingly beautiful because they were not like peonies, which had strong colors and a spectacular appearance. On the contrary, not only were they not spectacular, but they were also not strong. They were a little like a sky full of stars. They were all cream-colored and even had a very light yellow color. Moreover, the flower buds were very petite, and only when they were clustered together did they show a little sense of existence. However, to Shi Shi, the flowers that bloomed were more pleasing to her than the peonies, or rather, the yellow flowers that bloomed from the cabbage that she had seen before. She could not bear to part with them. This was because they did not come easily. When Yang Yi brought Tong Tong over to admire the flowers with her, the little girl was worried that her little brother would be as naughty as Little Gray. She carefully reached out to pull Tong Tong, who was standing on the ground, and persuaded him, "Little brother, you can't touch these flowers. You can only look at them from afar." Tong Tong looked up at his sister in confusion, then turned his body sideways to look at the flowers. To the little guy, all of this did not seem to be anything special. What was his sister talking about? When Yang Yi heard this, he smiled but did not stop her. Instead, he pondered for a while and asked, "Shi Shi, Daddy will test you with a question. Let's see if you can answer it, okay?" "What question?" Shi Shi turned her head curiously. "How many petals does a radish flower have?" "How many petals?" Cici was stumped by this question. She was quite flexible. She didn't know, so she chose to investigate on the spot. "I'll count them." However, when she saw the large cluster of radish flowers, the little girl was troubled. There are so many." 1, 2, 3, 4. Tong Tong looked at his sister and blinked his big eyes. The little guy had learned quite a few numbers when Murphy took him for a stroll on the small slope of Pavilion Hill behind the Villa District. She would hold his hand as they climbed the stairs, and she would teach him to count the steps bit by bit. Cici really did start counting them one by one. However, after a while, she became dizzy. She was dazzled by the flowers. After counting for a while, she forgot which ones she had counted. There are too many." The little girl muttered anxiously. Yang Yi looked at Shi Shi in amusement. After counting for a while, he said to her, "You counted wrong. You have to look at the bottom. Only this small piece is a flower. This big cluster of flowers gathered together." Daddy, why didn't you say so earlier?" Cici realized that her train of thought just now was all wrong, but she had counted so many numbers for nothing. She shook her little but unwillingly and started to complain about her father. The little girl was very smart now. She could even discover her father's bad taste. However, after complaining, she continued to count with interest. "Let me look again. 1, 2, 3, 4. But it seems that there are more than 4. In order to identify it clearly, she curiously moved closer and reached out to touch the flower. Only then did she happily turn her head to report to her father, "No, it's still 4 petals because I was wrong. I thought this was 5 petals, but it's not. There is a flower beside it, and I mistook the petals of this flower for this flower." The little girl blabbered on about her discovery. Then, she happily smiled at her father and waited for his praise. However, Tong Tong pulled his sister's hand and said, 1, 1. 1 what? She was puzzled. Tong Tong looked up with a serious expression. He used his empty right hand to gesture in the air. It was as if he was pressing down. With a clear rhythm, he muttered, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5. It was as if he was complaining that his sister did not recite the number 5. He looked at his sister and repeated the number 5 loudly. Perhaps because of their age difference, she understood her brother's meaning. She giggled and said, "No, little brother, there is no 5. I was counting the petals of the flower with Papa. You were reciting the jingle. Mom recited it for you. I'll recite it for you too." The little girl excitedly raised her voice and recited, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you can't hit the tiger, you can hit the squirrel. When Tong Tong heard his sister recite the jingle, it was as if he had found a soulmate. He beamed with joy and clapped his hands. Then, he said in an inarticulate voice, "Bite the pine. It's the squirrel." She tried hard to correct him. She's radish blooming was a big deal. Not only did the little girl admire and record it, but she also could not help but announce it to the world. At noon, after she finished her lunch, before going to bed, she used WeChat to call her mother, grandpa, little aunt, and her grandfather who was far away in America. She told them that the radish she planted had bloomed. "The radish has bloomed, then your radish can't be eaten. It's too old." On the other side of the camera, Mo Henian's face was dark. He probably did not understand how the front camera of the phone could be aimed at his face. However, this did not prevent him from instructing she. "Ask Yang-e, your father, to plant the seeds that have bloomed. In a few months, there will be radishes to eat. Seeds, eat radishes, okay?" The little girl listened obediently. She held the phone and nodded seriously. Forget it. You may not remember if I tell you. Give the phone to your father. I'll talk to him." Mo Henian clearly underestimated his granddaughter's memory. However, she still obediently ran back and handed the phone to her father. "Papa, Grandpa wants to talk to you." After a while, Yang-e explained to Mo Henian that he was not going to plant radishes for she. This was just one of she's science assignments. She, instead of sleeping at noon, you actually went outside to look at the radish blooming. You even disturbed Grandpa's rest. Do you know that it's already very late abroad? After Yang-e put away the phone, he reached out and rubbed the little girl's hair. "Okay, then can I call Sister Xiaowei, little Yu, and the others? Also Chi-Chi, Shiyun, Zhaoyu." She said to her father with a smile. "No, it's noon now. You have to take a nap. Look, your brother is already taking a nap." Yang-e simply picked up the little girl and walked upstairs. He smiled and said, "If you want to tell your other friends, you can wait until the afternoon or tomorrow when you go to school. You can take a few photos. Daddy will help you develop them and show them to them." Okay. She was a little disappointed. However, she suddenly felt that her father's suggestion was not bad, so she happily agreed. In the afternoon, when Yang-e was talking to Murphy on the phone, she ran over and said that she wanted to go to Lon Xian's house to play. "Okay, then be careful." Yang-e agreed. Usually, the two little girls would run around by themselves, so the villa area was quite safe. However, what Yang-e didn't expect was that not long after, before he finished his phone call, he saw Steamed Bun, who had been lying peacefully in the living room, wagging his tail and running out. He. She, where are your radish blooms?" Lon Xian's loud voice could be heard from afar. Chapter 1054. On Monday, Yang-e made a rare business trip to Guangdong Province. Together with Fu Jun and Lan Cao Kai, he attended the signing and release ceremony for the acquisition and expansion of Wanjia Ebai's online shopping mall. Of course, Yang-e was only the second shareholder of Sahara and met with a few of the main leaders of Guangdong Province. He did not show his face at the press conference. This kind of thing to be in the limelight and improve his image was meaningless to Yang-e. Lan Cao Kai was very interested. Speaking of which, the negotiation process was very short. After all, both sides were willing to cooperate. Moreover, Guangdong Province was very satisfied to see Sahara's plan to support small micro-enterprises and individual merchants. They were also willing to make a big concession. After some discussion, they also gave Sahara's online shopping mall a lot of favorable conditions. For example, at the junction of Buda City and Yongqing City, they gave the Sahara Group a piece of land of about 2,000 acres by the mountains and rivers for them to build their future headquarters. Although this piece of land was not immediately handed over to Sahara Group, and Sahara also expected to wait a year or two for itself to go public before starting to plan for the headquarters, how could Sahara not accept the benefits directly determined in the contract? In addition, according to Yang Yi's instructions, Fu Jun set up the Sahara Taobao Shopping Mall project team and reached an agreement with Guangdong Province. In the future, Guangdong Province would fully support Sahara and give a certain amount of tax relief to small merchants who opened online stores in Sahara. This could be said to have established a golden brand for Sahara, enough to attract many people to join. However, the entire negotiation process was not smooth sailing. Fu Jun and the Guangdong provincial government had different opinions on the employee arrangement of the original Wanjia eBuys online shopping mall. The Guangdong provincial government still hoped that they would properly settle the more than 2,000 laid-off employees. It would be best if all of them were incorporated under their banner. After all, from the government's point of view, if you bought a company, you could not buy an empty shell and then leave more than 2,000 people behind to give the government a headache, right? However, for a technology company, layoffs and staff reduction were very familiar. In order to maintain rapid development, they needed a cruel mechanism of survival of the fittest. Moreover, the group of employees recruited by Zhu Wang, who had just graduated from university, did not meet Sahara's requirements in terms of ability. After all, most of the outstanding computer talents in Guangdong Province had flowed into the Sahara or other top technology companies when they had just graduated. How many outstanding talents could a small and inconspicuous Wanjia recruit? Therefore, accepting these 2,000 people was more of a burden for the Sahara Desert. Letting them enjoy the same level of benefits as the other employees was also unfair to the other employees. At one point, this issue had been on the negotiating table for nearly a week. That was until Fu Jun made a concession. Of course, this was also Yang Yi's idea. He asked Fu Jun to evaluate the 2,000 people. Those who met the standard would be assigned to the Sahara Express that Li Long was in charge of. In the future, if their ability improved, they could also choose to be transferred to the head office. As for the rest who did not meet the standards, Yang Yi also asked Fu Jun to take them in. He was going to set up a public welfare organization under the Sahara Taobao Mall. He had other uses for these people. On Monday and Tuesday, there was a continuous drizzle in Jiangqing. Finally, on Wednesday, the sky finally cleared up, and the warm sun shone on the earth. The sun was not too hot, so there were some traces of rain on the campus of Huijia Primary School. Under the shade of the trees, there were puddles of rainwater that had not been dried by the sun. The wet leaves stuck to the ground, making it look a little messy. Oh, there are so many leaves. Early in the morning, the voices of a few girls broke the silence of the world. Cece's mutterings were echoed by Lu Xiaoyu. She also pouted and grumbled, "That's right. There are so many leaves. How long will it take to sweep them?" At this time, Shi's rich experience in helping her father with housework came in handy. She smiled and said, No, little you, let me tell you. When we sweep these leaves in the water, we can't use brooms like ours. We have to use my papa's super long and super big brooms. My papa said that they are made from bamboo that pandas eat. That's right. She became more and more excited as she spoke. She beamed with joy as she gestured the giant pandas baring teeth and brandishing claws. She giggled and said, My papa also showed me a video of a giant panda. The giant panda will bite these brooms because they are made of bamboo. Lu Xiaoyu listened attentively. When she came back to her senses, her words hit the nail on the head. But we don't have such a big broom. We only have this kind of broom. Lu Xiaoyu raised the plastic broom in her hand and said worriedly. That's right. She sighed and said helplessly, I don't like to use this kind of broom to sweep the floor. It gets dirty when it comes in contact with water. Hurry up and sweep the floor. The class is going to start soon. At this time, Li Ruolin, who had come to supervise the morning reading, came over. Seeing that the children were still chatting there, she reminded them helplessly. "Oh, the teacher is here." With the panicked cries of the little girls, they all threw themselves into the work. Shi and Lu Xiaoyu were the same. Although it was inconvenient to sweep the floor with a plastic broom, they still had to work hard. They didn't want to be criticized by the teacher. However, there were still some boys in Shi's group who were more mischievous. For example, Zhang Chen. This little boy was short and lacked a domineering aura compared to Chen Yuxuan, but he was also very active. Usually in class, he would make a lot of small movements. After sweeping the floor for a while, he became restless again. His dark eyes revealed a sly look as he silently approached Shi and Lu Xiaoyu, who were carefully sweeping the floor. Then he deliberately waved the broom and swept the leaves and mud into the air. Oh! Shi and Lu Xiaoyu were caught off guard. Some leaves were suddenly thrown onto their feet and shoes, scaring the girls. "Zhang Chen, what are you doing? You are so annoying." Not only Shi and Lu Xiaoyu, but 2 other girls were also attacked by him. They all angrily denounced the naughty guy. "Zhang Chen, you have to sweep the floor seriously. No pranks. If you do this again, the teacher will punish you to sweep the floor alone. Everyone else can go back and rest." Fortunately, Li Ruolin was also supervising them. When she noticed the situation, she immediately criticized him. The naughty boy lowered his head and became obedient. At this time, a tall male teacher walked by. When he saw Li Ruolin, his eyes lit up and he smiled. "Teacher Li, long time no see. Right, I have an injured bird here. Do you want to take care of it?" Chapter 1055. Zhao Chuming was a PE teacher in Huijia Primary School. He was currently teaching the 4th and 5th grade classes. However, in the previous school year, before Li Ruolin was transferred to teach the 1st grade, he had taught Li Ruolin's PE class. Therefore, the 2 of them could be considered old acquaintances. This morning, he was in charge of inspecting the school's hygiene and cleanliness. However, when he passed by the grassy field behind the first teaching block, Zhao Chuming heard a very weak chirp, chirp, chirp sound. When he looked in the direction of the sound, he found that it was not on the tree, but in the grass. It was a little bird with brownish-red fur and dark brown feathers. Its right wing was drooping on the ground, and it seemed to be injured. Zhao Chuming looked at it on the ground for a while, then gently held it in his hand. After all, this little bird was really small. It was not even half the size of Teacher Zhao's palm. However, it looked very strong. With its round head and chubby body, it seemed to have become fat like a ball. It did not even have a neck. It was very lovable. It had to be said that Teacher Zhao was a kind person who was tall and could smell roses. He was prepared to carry it back to their office in the gymnasium so that the male teachers could take care of this injured little bird. However, on the way back to the gymnasium, Zhao Chuming unexpectedly saw Li Ruolin standing in the hygiene area of their class. Teacher Li's charming appearance immediately attracted Teacher Zhao's attention. She just casually used her hand to gently brush her hair behind her ear. This unintentional flirtatious look made Teacher Zhao's soul fall into a daze. He had not interacted with her for a long time. She was still so youthful, beautiful, and intellectual. Therefore, Teacher Zhao could not help but walk over and use this little bird as a topic to strike up a conversation with Li Ruolin. After Zhao Chuming said those words, he quickly reacted and wanted to slap himself. F***CK. Is this how you talk to a girl? Are you being a hooligan or trying to strike up a conversation? Fortunately, he was holding an injured little bird in his hand. This little bird immediately attracted all of Li Ruolin's attention. Why would she pay attention to his words just now? Teacher Zhao, the little bird is injured? What kind of little bird is this? Li Rulan took a step forward in surprise and looked at it carefully. Zhao Quming replied in embarrassment, I don't know, but it feels like a sparrow. It shouldn't be a sparrow. I've seen sparrows before. Sparrows have more colorful feathers than this one. This little bird looks very beautiful. Li Rulan shook her head. Teacher Li, if you like it, then I'll leave this little bird to you. I'm just a boar, I'm afraid I won't be able to take care of it. Zhao Quming pretended to be generous and extended his hand. In fact, he was looking forward to Li Rulan saying something like, let's take care of it together. Of course, the possibility of that happening was relatively small, but as a man, he had to be more generous in front of a woman. Just as Zhao Quming was staring at Li Rulan, waiting for her response, an excited cry suddenly came from beside them. Wow! Little bird! Lu Xiaoyu was the first to discover it. She cried out excitedly and even reached out to pull Shi to let her take a look. Soon, the children uniformly surrounded them. Not only Shi, but all the children from the first grades class 3 who were involved in the cleaning were looking at Zhao Quming with shining eyes. To be precise, they were looking at the little bird in his hand. Teacher, what kind of little bird is this? Teacher, what's wrong with this little bird? Teacher, did you hurt this little bird? Zhao Quming was almost drowned out by the chattering of the children. He was a little overwhelmed by the questions. Fortunately, Li Rulan took the initiative to help explain, and the children's spearheads moved away from him. Teacher, you must take care of this little bird. It's so pitiful. Shi's lively big eyes revealed a look of pity. Her two small hands hugged the plastic broom to her chest as she pitifully said to Li Rulan, let me take care of it. I've taken care of little birds before. Jiang Chen said enthusiastically, my dad can take care of it, and when its wings are healed, it can fly. Shi looked back at Jiang Chen. For this naughty little boy who loved to play pranks, Shi was obviously not at ease. Therefore, the little girl also raised her voice and begged Li Rulan, teacher, can you take care of it for me? I'll take care of it very carefully. The little girl's pitiful begging eyes were difficult to refuse. However, coincidentally, behind Shi, there were several children who also wanted to take care of the little bird. The noise almost drowned Li Rulan and Zhao Quming. Like this. Li Rulan carefully took the little bird from Zhao Quming's hand and said sternly, you can't make noise because the little bird is still very fragile. It's injured and needs to rest. If you make noise, you'll scare it. Yes, you can't make noise. She quickly nodded, looked around at her classmates, and reminded them. You can't make noise. Jiang Chen glared at her unhappily. She looked at the boy and was a little annoyed, but considering the feelings of the little bird, she could only pout angrily and didn't argue with him. Let's finish our work first. The teacher will take care of the little bird, and then we'll see how to take care of it during class. We'll help it recover so that it can return to nature as soon as possible, okay? Li Rulan said with a smile. She already had an idea. Li Rulan didn't plan to take care of the little bird herself, nor did she plan to entrust it to any child. She planned to let all the students of the first grade class 3 take care of it together. Wasn't this a good opportunity to cultivate the love and responsibility of children? However, she misunderstood the teacher's words. She thought she had to perform well to win the teacher's approval and obtain the right to take care of the little bird. Okay, little fishy, let's go sweep the floor. She suddenly became super energetic. The little girl ran first and tried her best to sweep the leaves with water that were the most difficult to sweep. Li Rulan saw that the little guys consciously went to sweep the floor and didn't continue to buzz around her. She finally let out a sigh of relief and looked at Zhao Quming with a bitter smile. There was a short break between the morning reading class and the first class. The students on duty who went out to sweep the floor came back with their tools. Excianaire. She didn't even have time to put the broom back in the back of the classroom. She hugged the broom and excitedly ran to Lon Xian's seat. She chattered, let me tell you, we just saw a little bird. Yes, an injured little bird. Lu Xiaoyu teased Shi as if she was performing a crosstalk with her. But it's super cute. It's only this big, round, and its eyes are this small. She put the broom aside and gestured with her hands and feet. It's very pretty. It's red. Lu Xiaoyu nodded and smiled. It's not red. It's brownish red. She corrected her. She had learned to draw and knew the difference between colors. But it's so pitiful. Its right wing is injured. It can't fly. Lu Xiaoyu's expression was on point. In an instant, she changed from happy to sad. Chapter 1056. I want to tell Mr. Li that we can raise a bird because we have a big house. The bird will like it, Shi said expectantly. Lu Xiaoyu sighed regretfully and said, My house can't do that. My dad won't let me raise a pet. But if the bird lives in our house, you can also come to my house to play. That way, you can see the bird. She enthusiastically helped her friend think of a solution, as if she had already brought the injured bird home. Although Lan Xian was also curious about the bird, she wasn't that excited. She sat calmly in her chair, looking at Shi and Lu Xiaoyu for a while. Her head was also spinning. Finally, she waited for a break in the conversation between Shi and Lu Xiaoyu. She hit the nail on the head and asked, But, Shi, you already have 3 cats at home. How can you raise a bird? The joy on Shi's face froze. The little girl frowned slightly, thinking about Lan Xian's words. Yes. Lu Xiaoyu's reaction was more direct. Because she wasn't the one who wanted to raise a bird, she exclaimed, I've seen on TV. Cats will catch birds to eat. Shi also knew, so the little girl was now very confused. She muttered, But, we can raise the bird in a cage. We used to raise little goldfish at home, and nothing happened. If Yang Yi was here to hear this, he would definitely cover his face with his hands. A string of inner monologues would appear on his forehead. Daughter, you don't know. It's not that your little goldfish is fine. It's that you think it's fine. Of course, Shi and her friends didn't have a chance to discuss it now, because the first class had started. The math teacher, Lu Xianxian, had already walked in from outside with a textbook under his arm. Shi and Lu Xiaoyu hurriedly put the cleaning tools in their hands at the back of the classroom, and then hurriedly sat back in their seats. They couldn't act too naughty. If they did, the teacher wouldn't like it, and they wouldn't have the chance to take care of the injured bird. The language class was in the 3rd period, but when the first period ended, Shi and the others couldn't help but go to the teacher's office to visit the injured bird. Is it really that beautiful? Du Yuqian asked curiously on the way. It's true. It's just like the chick my grandpa raises, but the chick is bigger and yellow. It's smaller and cuter. Shi turned sideways and skipped forward, excitedly describing to her little friend. However, they did not expect that this injured bird had already become the star character of the 1st grade teacher's office. When they entered, they saw many teachers standing beside Li Rulan's desk, talking and laughing. Beside them, there were also some subject representatives who had come to hand in their homework to join in the fun. So many people. Shi immediately felt a sense of crisis and looked at those people nervously. When they squeezed in, Shi saw that the injured bird had already moved into a small wire bird cage. Yongxi, Lan Xian, Lu Xiaoyu. Du Yuqian is here too? Li Rulan saw the 4 girls and smiled. Are you here to see the bird? Shi and the others quickly nodded. Li Rulan smiled and said, Don't worry. Teacher Zhao brought a bird cage over just now. Now it has a place to live. Then, teacher, what does the bird eat? Is it very hungry now? Du Yuqian and Lan Xian were both staring at the bird that they had never seen before. Instead, it was Lu Xiaoyu who asked in a low voice. Just now, a teacher gave some breadcrumbs. Look, it's in the small basin in its cage. But it doesn't dare to eat yet. It's probably still a little afraid of strangers. Li Rulan pointed at the trembling bird in the middle of the cage and smiled. But don't birds eat small worms? Shi's two small hands clung to the edge of the teacher's desk and asked in confusion. It eats a lot of things. Bread can be eaten, and so can breadworms. By the way, I just asked a natural science teacher who knows more about these things. This is a common bird in Zhongqing. It's called the brown-headed crow, Li Rulan said with a smile. Shi's big bright eyes blinked. She suddenly had an idea and said happily, Teacher, I know. We can call it Xiaoya. She didn't care what the bird's scientific name was. To a girl of this age, whether it was a crow, a sparrow, or a brown-headed crow, they were all birds. There was no difference. Moreover, she felt that calling it Xiaoya sounded better. Hey, can you guys wait a moment? Du Yuqian said anxiously, Teacher, what's the bread worm you mentioned? Will bread grow worms? Then I won't dare to eat bread in the future. The break between classes was very short, and Cici and the others had to go back to class very soon. After that, they endured until the third class before they saw Teacher Li Rulan carrying a bird cage and bringing Xiaoya into the classroom. Bird. Whether it was the children who had seen the bird before, the children who had only heard about it from the former, or the children who had only seen the bird now, they all cried out excitedly. Suddenly, the classroom was as lively as a market. It was only after the bell rang that they barely suppressed their excitement and quieted down. Students, I believe you have heard about this bird. It was this morning. Li Rulan smiled and introduced the bird to the students from the time it was discovered to the present situation. Then, she turned around and wrote 4 words on the blackboard. Brown-headed crow, this is a bird that is mainly distributed in our country. It's also relatively common in Zhongqing. What does it eat? Actually, it's an omnivore. It usually eats beetles, insect eggs, or smaller insects. It also eats some fruits or seeds of plants. Of course, now that it's injured and can't fly to hunt by itself, we can also feed it fine corn flour or bird feed. Some fruits are also okay. It can peck at them by itself. Li Rulan explained so much without stopping. Of course, it was not because she was familiar with this bird, but because she secretly took a few glances at a guide on the podium. It was written for her by her teacher in the natural science class. When Li Rulan was explaining seriously, the other children listened with their little mouths open. However, she was very serious about taking notes in her little notebook. When the teacher mentioned that the bird ate fruits, the children raised their hands and said enthusiastically, I have an apple. I have a snow pear. I have a yellow peach. They fought over it as if they wanted to share their lunch fruit with the bird. Seeing that all of you are so enthusiastic about this bird, the teacher is very touched. Li Rulan pressed her hands together, indicating for them to stop arguing. She smiled and said, So, this time, the teacher has decided to give all of you, the students of the first grade, Class 3, a glorious and arduous task. Hearing this, Wang Lei, who was more upright below the stage, had already puffed out his chest and listened attentively. The teacher hopes that everyone will take care of this bird together. Oh right, when the first class ended, she even named it Xiaoya. The teacher left Xiaoya in the classroom and asked everyone to take care of it, feed it, and accompany it to recuperate. Li Rulan's voice was filled with tenderness and passion, echoing in the classroom. Finally, she said, then, when its wings are healed, we will send it back to nature together so that it can fly freely and return to the sky where it belongs, okay? She was very happy at first because the teacher had used her name for Xiaoya, but later on, she was disappointed. She couldn't raise Xiaoya at home. Originally, the little girl had already made beautiful plans for the bird's life in her house. She could ask her father to build a beautiful nest for it, and then when she went to exercise with her father in the morning, she could take it to see the scenery and bask in the sun. But now, these beautiful ideas could not be realized because the teacher did not agree to let her bring Xiaoya home. However, she quickly recovered from her disappointment because she realized that although she did not get Xiaoya, she did not lose Xiaoya either. Xiaoya lived in the class, so she could often see Xiaoya. And this was also good because she did not have to worry about the 3 cats at home eating Xiaoya. There were no cats in the class, although there was a robot cat drawn on the blackboard at the back, it only liked to eat tong luo yaki. I have to ask Papa to see what Xiaoya needs, whether she wants to see a doctor, whether she wants to cover herself with a blanket. Shi's little head was spinning rapidly, and the little girl's expression became positive again. Right now, the teacher was on the podium, collecting the list of students who were mainly responsible for taking care of the bird. The other students also had to help, but the main responsibility was still the students of this care group. They had to divide the responsibilities so that the little guys would not only have 30% of the enthusiasm. Moreover, with a sense of responsibility and the right arrangements, this bird could be continuously taken care of. Young Shi, are you willing to be a member of the care group to take care of Xiaoya? Li Ruolin asked. She knew that she liked this bird very much, but at this time, the little girl seemed to be a little distracted, so she asked directly. Yes, yes. She stood up happily. The little girl puffed out her small chest and nodded seriously. She said, I will definitely take good care of Xiaoya. Chapter 1057. There were quite a number of children who signed up for the care group. Those who raised their hands accounted for more than half of the total number. After all, children of this age all had a pure and flawless heart. Of course, it was unknown how long their enthusiasm would last. Li Ruolin spent some time to divide the children into teams. There were a total of 5 teams, which corresponded to Monday to Friday. Each team was responsible for taking care of the birds for a day. Moreover, each team had a class committee member as the team leader. Shi, of course, also became the team leader. In addition to her, there were 5 other team members, including Lu Xiaoyu and Wang Lei. Their team was responsible for taking care of the birds on Tuesday. Shi, for the first time, felt her presence as a literature committee member and the benefits of being a class committee member. Although it was already Wednesday and Cici and the others were not in charge of taking care of the little birds, the little ones were still very enthusiastic. After class, they crowded in front of the bird cage, discussing and quarreling with each other. Can you guys stop arguing? Xiaoya needs to sleep. You see, it's not in good spirits. After it was injured, it must be in pain and wants to rest. Shi's eyebrows drooped slightly as she worriedly appealed to everyone. Shi's words were quite effective. Other than Zhang Chan and Chen Yuxuan, the other children were willing to listen to Shi's command. Of course, Zhang Chan and Chen Yuxuan did not cause trouble at this time. They were worried about the birds and obediently shut their mouths. Shi, let me tell you, you have to feed the birds water, Wang Lei whispered on the side. Feed them water? Shi didn't understand at first. Wang Lei nodded vigorously. Under everyone's surprised gaze, he said seriously, yes, birds need to drink water. Our family used to raise a beautiful pigeon, but I didn't give it any water to drink, so it died. He was dead. Such a terrifying result. Immediately, the little guys started to panic. I have water, I'll give it water to drink. Shi reacted the quickest. She quickly ran back to her seat and took out the water bottle that she usually drank from. Here. Wang Lei pointed to a small blue barrel at the bottom of the birdcage and said. He looked into Shi's eyes and blinked, but he had no intention of making a move himself. She didn't know that Wang Lei actually liked it but was also afraid of it. He had raised pigeons before, but he always let his parents take care of them. He was afraid that if he reached his hand in, it would peck him with its sharp beak. She didn't care. She only cared about how to take good care of the bird. She opened the birdcage and reached in to take the small blue bucket. Fortunately, although the brown-headed raven was small, it was actually a lively and brave bird. When she put her hand in, it only tilted its head slightly, looked at Shi, and chirped weakly. Close the door, or it will run away. Du Yuqian and the other girls anxiously shouted, but they were just making blind suggestions. Shi filled the small blue barrel with the water that she drank and stuffed it back to the bird. Moreover, Shi pushed it and placed it in front of the bird. Under the urging of her friends, Shi quickly closed the birdcage, afraid that Xiaoya would run out. Will it drink? Cici looked at the birdcage expectantly and muttered in a low voice. Beside her, Liao Qianqian was kneeling on a chair, her 2 arms supporting her cheeks on the table. She was Lan Xian's deskmate. When she heard Shi's worry, she kindly said, Shi, it might not be so fast. It hasn't recognized us yet. It treats us as strangers. It can't eat food given by strangers. But perhaps it was thirsty, or perhaps she had some magical powers. The bird tilted its head left and right, not knowing what it was looking at. After pondering for a while, it slowly stepped on its thin little feet, walked over, and took a sip of water. It drank. It drank. Before she could feel happy, the boys behind her cheered excitedly. Wang Lei was so excited that his little face was red. Not only did it drink water, after the bird drank its fill, it even took a sip of water and combed its hair. Obviously, it was more energetic than before. She was overjoyed like her friends. Moreover, she still remembered what Liao Qianqian said just now. The girl turned her head around happily and said to Liao Qianqian, Qianqian, looks like Xiaoya is willing to treat us as good friends. Yang Yi only found out about the story of Xiaoya when he went to pick up Shi and Lan Xian in the evening. I really want to bring Xiaoya home to live, but Xian said that cats eat birds. But, Papa, our families Xiao Guai, Xiao Hui, and Dodo are so obedient. They won't eat Xiaoya, right? Shi was still thinking about this. After returning home, she saw Xiao Guai walking through the living room with its big fat butt, so she ran to ask her father. They won't eat birds. These guys have been raised to be picky. Not to mention birds, they won't even eat mice. Yang Yi smiled and said. Murphy heard this and quickly waved her hand and said, You can't say that. Although they won't eat, after all, their nature is there. If you really put the bird at home, it may still suffer. I saw a micro-broadcast 2 days ago. It said that cats treat themselves as part of our family. They feel that they have the obligation to hunt for food for the family, so they will catch some mice, birds, and so on and give them to you. Yang Yi suddenly understood. He smiled and said to Murphy, Yes, you also showed it to me. That photo. When I woke up in the morning, I found a dead mouse beside my bed. Then we can't raise Xiaoya at home. She was anxious and worried. She said, Xiaoya is so small. It can't beat Xiao Guai and the others. Also, I'm afraid that Steamed Bun will bully it. Steamed Bun, who was lying on the sideboard, raised his head and looked at the little master with a confused expression. Papa thinks that your teacher's idea is pretty good. Let you and your classmates take care of the bird together, instead of only you being able to see the bird. Everyone can help the bird recover. How good is that? Yang Yi said with a smile. It's called Xiaoya because the teacher said that it's a brown-headed crow, but I don't know why it's called that. She twisted her little butt, pouted her little mouth, and said sadly, But if Xiaoya lives in school, won't it be lonely? Also, I'm worried if it will be scared tonight. I can't accompany it in school because at night, I'm also scared. There's no such thing, little bird. Yes, Xiaoya is different from us humans. It's also different from Xiao Guai and Steamed Bun. Yang Yi comforted gently. It won't be scared. It used to live alone in the wild. Also, it wants to sleep peacefully at night. It's already very tired from playing with you guys during the day. It's okay, you go do your homework first. Tonight you can come to the study. Papa and you can look at the information together. We'll come up with a very detailed plan to raise Xiaoya. This way, you can take good care of Xiaoya. Yang Yi rubbed Shi's little head and said with a smile. N. She nodded her head and a smile appeared on her face. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.